he aligns himself with the truth. And it's time for you to choose a side. You're listening to Alex Jones.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show on this Thursday, January 18th, 2017. And, of course, tomorrow is going to be the inauguration. We have Alex Jones is on a plane right now on his way to Washington, D.C. We'll be doing a live broadcast tomorrow from Washington, D.C. with the InfoWars crew and Alex Jones. Also, we will be having a marathon broadcast that will be starting early in the morning. And, sorry, this is Wednesday. I said Thursday. They just sent me a note. Said, today is Wednesday. Yeah, it slips up on you, doesn't it? He's on his way. Tomorrow, he's going to be doing a broadcast from there. We're also going to be having our live coverage that's coming up. Today, we're going to have a former Secret Service agent who's going to be joining us to talk about the unusual threats. And, of course, this is not something that's coming from him, not something that's coming from us, not something that's coming from Project Veritas, but it's something that's coming from the chief of the Secret Service who was talking about this, Clancy. And he's saying, we've seen that people are willing to do things that they've never been willing to do before. And we're going to have to guard against that. And so we're going to have a follow-up on the Project Veritas report that we had yesterday. Of course, we have a link up on Drudge Report about the video, the second part of the Project Veritas undercover investigation. We talked to Project Veritas yesterday, James O'Keefe, about that. It was on the cusp of them releasing it. We have an article as well as a video up on Infowars.com. There's a link from the Drudge Report. Also, Alex is going to be joining us later in the show to comment on another article that is up on the Drudge Report, and that is the report that Roger Stone has survived an assassination attempt. General consensus, he said, is that he was poisoned. So we're going to be talking about that. A lot of crazy stuff that's happening already. Of course, it is. This is Wednesday, and as I just mentioned, and on Friday is going to be the inauguration. We've already had an anti-Trump protester set himself on fire outside of the D.C. hotel that is being developed by Donald Trump. It was in construction when we were up there last. It's probably close to being opened if it's not open yet. But set himself on fire in front of the hotel, but he's okay. They took him to the hospital with minor burns. He is he's from California. He can't even self-immolate and do it successfully. We're going to also be talking about cabinet hearings. We have Tom Price for Health and Human Services, Pruitt with the EPA, and we interviewed Craig Richardson earlier this week talking about how desperately we need to get somebody like Pruitt who respects the law in charge of this lawless agency that sees no bounds in what they think they can do. So that's a very key part of it. Of course, climate change is going to be the narrative that the Democrats come after, and the headline that we see here from The Hill, actually the New Republic, science will be on trial. As if this is like the new Galileo trial. Yeah, we need to talk about science. We need to talk about the fact that science is not determined by consensus, that science is about data, and that we've got some people who tried very hard to hide that data, and how the data does not support their theory when we do see it. That's why they were trying to hide it with ClimateGate. Also, Betsy Davos is going to be grilled on schools. So we're going to have everything from that to Joe Biden in Davos. So we got from Davos to Davos covered today. We have Joe Biden's speech that he made to the elites at Davos. And, of course, he chose that venue to make his farewell speech. Alex Jones is going to be talking about that when we come back. I think it's very interesting because it was done yesterday. And at the same time as the 56th anniversary of President Eisenhower's military-industrial complex speech. How about that? 56 years to the day that they're doing this. And that was... What was Eisenhower warning us about? He was warning us about a military-industrial complex. What have we seen with Barack Obama? We have seen the first time that administration has gone its entire 8 years at war. And not only that, but expanded it from 4 nations that they were fighting when he took office to 7. The military-industrial complex loves him. The globalists love him. That's where Biden made his farewell speech. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Alex Jones and his take on Joe Biden's farewell address.
We're just about to take off here in Austin and fly into D.C. and Dallas. I'll be on the ground with live reports today with David Knight. David Knight is coming up with the rest of the crew here in just a minute to kick off the broadcast. This is linked up on drudgereport.com. That's the easiest place to find it. In an epic final speech, Joe Biden warns that the progressive democratic world order is at risk of collapse. This is a guy that was just given the Freedom Award by Obama last week. Now let's talk facts here. Let's talk reality, okay? Everything that they say in this headline is a lie. The democratic world order, the private corporate world government that's setting up that's anti-free market and that openly wants a monopoly, the EU that has gotten all the member states to enter it, out of 25, all but 2 didn't get to vote to enter it. The UK never voted to enter it. It was a, quote, trade deal. They didn't even vote for that. Now, they've passed the Brexit 5 months ago. They're told, you're not allowed to leave. I predicted they'd say that because I know who these tyrants are. This is literally like a James Bond movie where you have these multinational combines taking over countries. This is the new colonialism. But the globalists have already taken over the third world. Now they're coming back and colonizing with political control and economic warfare of the first world. Once they've conquered that, once they've gotten rid of the only middle classes existing in their own white papers, their own WikiLeaks, their own Cloward and Piven strategies, it's game over. But all over the world, nation states are rising against globalism, and they admit, at Davos right now, the Communist Chinese president is speaking, as we speak, with other representatives, that they're going to prop up world government. So the Communist Chinese that have killed over 100 million of their own people. That's a conservative number. Biggest mass murders in history. They killed 4 times what Hitler did. Probably 5 times what Stalin did. Look it up, over 100 million, 80 plus million under Mao alone. They're going to teach us about a democratic world order here. Let me give you the exact quote of that. In an epic final speech, Joe Biden warns that the progressive democratic world order is at risk of collapse. Isn't that just special? Isn't that just darling? Well, what a joke. No. What's collapsing is unelected corporate TPP, IMF, World Bank, WTO, all run by a couple hundred people. You look at who runs the CFR, the Royal Commission, the roundtable groups, it's all a couple hundred people. Henry Kissinger's on every one of these boards, over 100 of them. The Rockefellers donated the UN land. They created all 30 of the world government promoting bodies. There's 30 of them, of these NGOs. Last time I checked, over 30. The 30 major ones. I mean, this is crazy. This is how they're taking over. And they're not taking over to build a better world. They don't want free market. They don't want families. They don't want strong men. They don't want independence. They want monopoly. They want full control. And the great news I keep telling you is they've hit the panic button. But we're fighting with logic. It's not a democratic world order when it's unelected and the Communist Chinese are the heart of it. Okay? Let me just explain that. When the biggest mass murderers in the world are your hope. That's the headlines in AP, Reuters. Chinese government, the hope of world government. As other nations pull back, the Chinese promise more free trade. That means more economic war against the West, more lowering of wages, more consolidation of power. I want to empower the Chinese people. They're amazing folks. We never should have backed Mao Zedong in 49. We should have backed Chiang Kai-shek, of course. And you see Trump now supporting Taiwan. You see Trump standing against the belligerents. And in just 2 days, hell, just in a matter of days, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see Donald Trump as the president of the United States. This is such an incredible time to be alive. I am so honored to be here with you, and I cannot stress enough that our ideology is more powerful than theirs 100 times. We're promoting liberty, we're promoting freedom, we're promoting renaissance, we're promoting free will and free association. That's unstoppable. That's why Maxine Waters comes out and says, calling her crooked Hillary is a Russian government trick because Putin tells him what to do because, see, they're all command and control. They have people telling them what to say, people telling them what to do, and so they can't imagine there's always independent people fighting them. They can't imagine that InfoWars. I've had government agents, Mossad, CIA, New York Times, Washington Post, all of them ask me, how are you doing it? Who's backing you? Who's behind you? Where did all this come from? And I'm like, it's ideas. It's 1776. It's one person 20-something years ago seeing a threat to America, trying to build a media operation to counter it, started on Access Television. And there were other people just like me also taking action, like Matt Drudge and WorldNet Daily and countless others. And now Americana's coming back into the world. Our listeners, many of them a lot older than I am, have been involved in the fight for liberty for decades. And you're the reason we're here today. You built the foundation we all stand on. So I salute you. For everybody from Barry Goldwater to Ron Paul to the folks that wrote None Dare Call a Conspiracy, to Cleon Skousen, to everybody, you're the reason we're here and able to fight. The John Birch Society, they've been proven 100% accurate. So chillingly accurate, so dead on, so amazing. I'm not even a member. I'm just saying, that group went through demonization, went through hell, back when nobody knew this, back when nobody cared, and back when people really believed Walter Cronkite and all the bull. So it's those trailblazers. Listen, in the beginning, as Mark Twain said, in the beginning, a patriot's a scarce man, hated, feared, scorned. But in time when his cause succeeds, the timid join him, because then it costs nothing to be a patriot. And I've been through a lot of persecution. I've been attacked. But quite frankly, I'm a later wave in this fight. The waves get bigger. I had it easy, where half the listeners agreed with me 20-something years ago. Imagine 99% attacking you, and the big three networks, when they had total dominance and almost total trust, saying you're traitors, saying you're evil, saying you're racist when you're not. And so they've used that same playbook for decades. Racist, racist, racist. That doesn't work now. So now they've shifted to Russian agent, and no one's buying it. The danger is, in their death throes, they may pull something big to try to really bring us into war or economic collapse. They're already trying to blame Trump for a collapse they say is coming as they push for one as hard as they can, trying to raise interest rates and other things. This is an epic time. But folks, you wanted to fight globalism. You wanted to fight the New World Order. You asked for champions. You're getting it. You are the champions. And don't let the globalists tell you that if you're black or Hispanic or Asian, that you're not welcome in the Tea Party. Are there racist white people? Damn right there are. Are there racist black people? You know there are. Same thing. Doesn't matter. With the GMO, the globalism, the toxic waste, all of it, humanity and every other species is under attack by the toxicity, by the GMO. We have to come together against the technocracy to defeat it. It's the big threat against all of us. Glyphosate's given all of our women breast cancer, isn't it? Glyphosate, fluoride's hurting all our children, isn't it? So let's get smart, not let them play us off against each other, and let's unify around free market and around open, sovereign nation that stands for individual liberty, and say no to collectivism, no to free speech killing political correctness, and restore true classical liberalism, which these neo-fascist globalists have hijacked. They're not the liberals, folks. They're not the people that are pro-freedom. They're the tyrants. They're demonizing America as the most unfree country in the world when it's been the freest. It hasn't been perfect, but they've got to kill that experiment. They've got to kill that idea. They've got to shut that down, because they can't compete with it. A lot of big stuff's happening. The third world government's falling right now, but we have got to fill the gap and restore the republic, 1776 worldwide. Not an empire run by corporations that own America, but an empire of ideas spreading across the planet. And it's happening. Globalism is imploding. It's burning down because of its arrogance and its corruption. But again, we have to now rebuild the culture and rebuild society. The enemy's not totally routed yet, but they are in their death throes. Next time I'm speaking to you, Lord willing, please pray for us. We'll be in D.C. covering the inauguration live with a lot of surprises. Infowars.com/show for live feeds and transmissions. In closing, you're the power, folks. There's so many listeners I run into, so many great patriots getting outside their shell, spreading the word. Now, if that giant group just tells one more group and one more group about the show and about other broadcasts like it, and if more of you start your own shows and your own newsletters, online blogs, whatever it is, call into talk radio, call into C-SPAN, we will prove and show the world that we're the dominant force, that we are the majority. They want to make us feel like we're alone. We're not alone. We are the future. We are free will. We are the resistance. I love you all, and I'll see you for the inauguration of Trump coming up here in just a few hours.
All right, and that's Alex Jones on his way to the Trump inauguration. There'll be a live broadcast tomorrow from Washington, D.C. with the crew, and of course we'll have live coverage on Friday of the inauguration itself. As Alex Jones was talking about Joe Biden, we're going to play that speech for you when we come back, and I want you to think about this as we go to break. The fact that we had 56 years ago, President Eisenhower warned the American people about the military-industrial complex. What did Joe Biden do yesterday? Well, he was speaking to his constituents, not the American people, but the globalist elite at Davos. What was he doing? He was warning them about a new sea change that's coming, and that is a return to people having control over their own lives at a national level rather than this consolidation towards global governance. So he was talking to all the people there who are hovering in their safe places at Davos, concerned that they're about to lose their concentration of power. And just, again, we can't not say this enough times. The fact that we had a year ago, 62 people had wealth equivalent to 1/2 of the world, and that consolidated down to just 8 this last year. That's the kind of rapid consolidation we've seen under Barack Obama, under these globalist policies that he represents. And Obama is the epitome of the military-industrial complex. A man who, for the first time, our first president, think about this, who has been at war the entire 8 years he's been president. And he expanded the number of wars from 4 to 7 countries. We're going to cover Joe Biden's speech. We're going to talk about its context with Eisenhower. Of course, we're also going to have Gary Byrne, former Secret Service agent. We're going to have Gavin McInnes joining us in the next hour. Stay with us. It's going to be a big show. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. Later in the show, we're going to have former Secret Service agent Gary Byrne, who's been on talking to us before about what he saw as he guarded the Clintons and other presidents as a Secret Service agent. We're going to talk to him about this new report, quoting the head of the Secret Service, Clancy, saying that they're looking at unprecedented attacks. And of course, we had yesterday James O'Keefe from Project Veritas on talking about their undercover investigation. We have that article up. There's a Drudge link you can see to radical leftists target D.C. Metro Rail to block inauguration access. That was part 2 of their undercover investigation. We talked to him about that yesterday. That video and the article you'll find at Infowars.com, also linked on Drudge. We'll be talking to Gavin McInnes in the next hour. And of course, we're also going to be covering the cabinet hearings that are coming up. There was a pardon of Chelsea Manning by Barack Obama. There's a lot involved in that. We're going to talk about what did Chelsea Manning release. We've got a lot of people, both Democrats and Republicans, who are angry about it. Some in both parties that are happy about it. So we're going to talk about what he leaked. Is he responsible for the death of people? Are the Republicans and Democrats who are complaining about him? And there you can see that video that came out, Collateral Murder. If you've never watched that video, you need to watch that video. It's absolutely heartbreaking to see what they do with it. We'll talk about why that's heartbreaking. We're also going to get down a list of what we learned from these leaks that came out with WikiLeaks. And of course, it's also interesting that Julian Assange had tweeted out through WikiLeaks that he would offer himself for extradition if Manning were pardoned. So there's been talk about what will happen with that. So we're going to cover all of that. But I want to focus right now on Joe Biden, because Alex Jones was just talking about that. And again, as I pointed out at the end of the last break, 56 years ago, Eisenhower warned his constituents, the American people, about the military-industrial complex. This is what we see, the people who have kept us at war through the entire 8 years of Barack Obama, the people who were trying to undermine the Trump presidency with this fake Russia did it stuff and the fake dirty dossier. And we've got Joe Biden going to Davos and warning his constituents about how things might not be so great for them because their policies have ruined the lives of people all over the world as they try to consolidate their wealth and their power, their globalism. Of course, they're surrounded. You see pictures of Joe Biden with the Clooneys. This is a rock star globalist event, unlike Bilderberg, that they didn't want anybody to know about. They didn't want to talk about it. If you talked about it for years, you were derided as a conspiracy theorist. But I want to start out by playing you a little bit of Eisenhower's speech. And then we're going to take a look at Joe Biden's speech. Here's what Eisenhower said to his constituents, the American people, 56 years ago as he left.
We must also be alert to the equal and opposite danger that public policy could itself become the captive of a scientific, technological elite. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
And of course, we had last week, we talked to Dr. Ayadure, who had seen the military-industrial complex come after him and try to take credit for his invention of email, which was not important. He wasn't making any money off of that, but the key was that they were coming after him for that because to try to discredit him because of his research on GMO foods. They wanted to totally discredit. So they said, look, this guy claimed that he invented email. No, we, the military-industrial complex, did it. This guy is a liar. You can't trust him on science when he's putting out peer-reviewed articles about GMOs. That's the way the military-industrial complex works. They work that way against scientists who don't follow their lead or that come against big multinational interests. They also come after presidential candidates. They come after others in the press. Let's go to the Joe Biden speech. We'll play a little bit of this. We won't have time for the full thing, but I want to leave my mic open, and I'll comment on this as we go through this speech here.
But the greatest threat on this front springs from the distinct illiberal and external actors who equate their success with fracturing the liberal international order.
Okay, so fracturing the liberal, hold it right there. So see, we had Eisenhower talking about the consolidating military, industrial, and academic complex. That was the original term that he had there. And he talks later in his speech about how they were taking control of the research at the universities, that sort of thing. And that's what you see happening, really. The whole climate change debate needs to be viewed in that context as well, because climate change is something that they're using to sell globalism. But he's talking about coming after the whole liberal order. Okay, that's what he calls the New World Order. He doesn't use that phrase because it's been around for a while, but now there's going to be a new World Order, as Matt Drudge pointed out. Let's continue on with this speech.
China and Iran would clearly prefer a world in which they have overwhelming sway in their regions.
Yeah, that's called, okay, let's hold it right there. He says people would prefer a world in which they have a say in their region. You know, like the fishermen in Britain who would like to be able to fish in the waters that they've fished in for hundreds of years. They'd like to have a say in their little corner of the world. That's what it's called. It's not racism. It's not xenophobia. It's self-governance. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host today. We're going to have Gavin McInnes join us in the next hour, and we're also going to have Gary Byrne, former Secret Service agent. He's written a book on his experiences as a Secret Service agent protecting the Clintons. That book was called Crisis of Character. But of course, we're going to be talking to him about the upcoming security concerns at the inauguration. We have an article up at InfoWars about the second part, the Project Veritas report, where people said they were going to try to disrupt transportation on the D.C. Metro rails, and also talking about punching people in the throat and various other things like that. They're now saying, oh, we were just joking. We weren't really serious about it. Of course, we've also had a guy set himself on fire in front of the Trump Hotel. Maybe he wasn't serious about it because he didn't die. I mean, it's kind of like somebody trying to shoot themselves in the head and missing. You know, maybe it's just a desperate cry for attention. But he set himself on fire and he starts screaming, Trump, Trump. What is that about? I mean, is he trying to set up Donald Trump? Claim Donald Trump set him up on fire? Look, there goes Trump. He's the one who did this. Maybe it's a false flame attack. I don't know. But this guy, of course, is a snowflake from California, and he didn't melt. He's now at the hospital. We're going to go back, take a look at this Joe Biden report. We're also going to talk about the pardon of Chelsea Manning. Took Obama 6 or 7 years before he decided that he shouldn't be in jail. I wonder why it took him that long. And of course, one of the interesting things about the stuff that was leaked by Chelsea Manning was the State Department memos. It's one of the reasons why Hillary Clinton was really after Julian Assange, because he released a lot of very embarrassing but very important truth about Hillary Clinton. And it wasn't the Russians. It was a private in the army who did it. Just like we have been told that it was insiders who handed over the DNC information. We had a former British ambassador said, I went to Washington. I met with somebody in the park. There was a DNC staffer who was concerned about how they had rigged the election for Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. So he handed over these documents to us. And then I gave them to WikiLeaks. See, that's, you don't need to have state actors. You didn't need a state actor for Guccifer 1.0 either. That was a guy, a Romanian, who wasn't a computer hacker at all. He wasn't a programmer. He wasn't a hacker. He didn't know anything about computers. He just guessed passwords. So again, this whole narrative is starting to come apart. But we're going to take a look at this pardon. We're going to look at what people are saying about this in both ways. And we're going to look at what Manning leaked. I think it's very important. We've got a long list of that from The Nation and from Wall Street Journal that I think is very important to take a look at that as we look at the result of this and put this in the context of the Obama administration, their continuous wars and their security leaks that they had themselves. I tweeted out on my Twitter account, Libertarian, I said, you know, the Demopublicans, you want to be angry about Chelsea Manning and say that he cost lives? Well, look to your own wars. Look to your own emails. Take care of yourselves first. When I see the NSA going to jail, when I see some of the people who violated the Constitution, violated the security like Hillary Clinton and Petraeus, when I see them going to jail, then we'll put people like Snowden in jail. We'll put people like Manning in jail until we stop this double standard where only the people at the bottom get busted. Only the people who expose crimes get busted, and never the people who commit the crimes, they walk free. And that's what we're seeing with Hillary Clinton. That's what burns me so much about this whole Russians did it meme. These criminals just continue to escape. The ones at the top always do. But let's go to the Joe Biden report here in just a moment. I want to remind you that we have a new special, a preparedness special. This is for the inauguration, 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food at InfoWarsStore.com. This is a great time, folks, to stock up on it. And as we look at the crazy stuff that's being planned by these people who are so insane that they will set themselves on fire, you never know what they're going to do. As Clancy of the Secret Service said, we've seen them jump over barriers and do all kinds of things in the run-up to the election that you don't typically see. But, of course, it could get a lot worse than that. We can have Muslims who are trying to drive trucks through crowds. So they understand that threat. They put barricades up to stop that threat, that sort of thing. You need to put up things to protect yourself as well. And that means that you provide for your family, for any kind of instability, and that could be a natural disaster where the shelves are wiped clean. I mean, just look at these snowstorms that happened last week. You look at the pictures. I saw pictures where snow and ice storms were hitting the Midwest, hitting the Northeast, and it looked like a Venezuela shopping market. There was absolutely nothing on the shelves because people had gone in and wiped it out. You know, so you can be wiped out by a Venezuelan socialist, or you can be wiped out by weather issues. You can be wiped out by some kind of an emergency. It doesn't have to be civil war or a EMP effect. All these things are always there, but it can just be something as simple as weather that can wipe out the food or send a spike in the price of food. So you can get this. It's all natural, made in the USA, shelf life of 25 years, great packaging because it preserves that food, and then once you open it, you can reseal it for a day or two that you're going to be eating it. Then it's just like anything else that you could reseal. So great packaging. All natural ingredients. There's no GMO, and you can freeze the price so that you can protect yourself against shortages, against spikes in food prices. And again, 40% off the regular price right now at InfoWarsStore.com. That's our inauguration preparedness special. Let's go back to Joe Biden. Let's pick up the speech about where we left off. He was just talking about this ridiculous idea that people would want to have some kind of control over their lives in the regions in which they live. See, they don't like that. That's why he's talking to his constituents, the globalist elite, the bankers, Hollywood, the multinational corporations, the politicians that go to Davos and schmooze each other. They're not having a good year this year, just like Hollywood and just like the snowflakes in the colleges. They're not happy. And so this is him giving his military-industrial speech, but to his constituents and saying, look, I see something on the horizon that is going to affect us, the elitists, who've had it pretty cozy up to this point. Let's go back to the Biden speech.
And I'll not mince words. This movement is principally led by Russia.
Oh, there you go. The Russians did it.
Under President Putin, Russia is working with every tool available to them to, one, whittle away at the edges of the European project, test the fault lines among Western nations.
Okay, hold it right there. Hold it right there. Okay, now, he lays out a situation just like they did before. They said, look, somebody told the truth about Hillary Clinton, and she lost. And I think it was the Russians. If you're trying to make the Russians look good, you guys are doing a really good job. And he comes here and he says, let's look at these people who think that people in the countries and local government should have some say over their lives instead of us telling everybody in the world who the winners are going to be financially and who the losers are going to be. We're going to decide which countries can have which industries. We're going to decide who can have jobs and who can't. We'll move that around as we wish. We'll transfer your jobs from America and from Western Europe to China if we wish. And then we'll elect the Chinese, we'll put the Chinese leader here to speak as he is today. We'll have him speak even though he's going to be speaking to the people who say we have to have totally open free trade and free markets, and there is no such thing that even comes close to that in China. The most hyper-nationalistic the most protectionist country you can find on earth. And they're the ones who are speaking there, because it used to be that America was taking the lead in globalism, and now America is not going to be taking the lead in globalism. As you see, their designated surrogate is going to be leaving the scene, Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And now we got somebody who is opposed to this. They're very worried about this. But it's amazing to me, the irony, that they would go pick the Chinese leader who has been against having people come into his country to compete. He put up trade barriers and protectionism there. He has profited off of globalism, but it's been a one-way street for the Chinese. And now he's saying the Russians are leading all of this. They are building up Vladimir Putin to tell us the truth about Hillary Clinton, to say that they're leading the fight against these globalist elite who have ripped off everybody worldwide. I mean, they need to stop making a hero out of Vladimir Putin, because he's got some problems. We've talked about those problems before, but these are the people who are building him up, not Donald Trump. Let's go back to the speech.
Politics defined by spheres of influence. We see it in their aggression against their neighbors, sending in so-called little green men across borders to stir violence and stirs of strains of separatism in Ukraine.
Okay, hold on a second. Hold that. Okay, we're supposed to forget about the fact that there were videos showing American soldiers with American accents walking about in the Ukraine conflict as well. So we never did anything. I mean, it's just those Russians who did it. And if you came in here, and if Russia went to California and tried to help the snowflakes to secede from the United States and started a war there, people would be upset about that. But you flip it around the other way, and it's not supposed to be a problem. And then when you go back and you look at Crimea, the continual talk about the annexation of Crimea, understand Crimea has been a part of the Russian Empire. Catherine the Great brought it in, took it from the Ottoman Turks, the Ottoman Empire, back in 1783. We didn't have a U.S. Constitution until 1789. So 6 years before we had a Constitution, Crimea has been a part of the Russian sphere of influence. And as Ukraine left, Crimea voted to remain, just like they did with Ireland and Northern Ireland. Now, that's created a problem in both areas. But that's not something that is an aggression by Putin in terms of trying to keep Crimea, any more than it was an aggression by the UK to say we're going to have an election, and if people in Northern Ireland want to identify and remain in the United Kingdom, they can do so. That created problems, but it wasn't their problem that happened. That had to be gradually worked out. But let's go back to his speech here.
Using energy as a weapon, cutting off gas supplies midwinter, raising prices to manipulate nations to act in Russia's interest, using corruption to empower oligarchs to coerce politicians. We see it in their worldwide use of propaganda and false information campaigns, injecting doubt and political agitation.
Hold it there a second. Hold it there a second. And I think we're going to stop it at this point. But, you know, he doesn't want to talk about the deals that the Biden family had with oil, with gas and that sort of thing as well. Look, we are the ones, and just this last week, we had Obama enact some new sanctions. So he says, well, you know, like the Russians took economic action against Europe and so forth. It's going both ways. We need to have a de-escalation of tension. That's the point. We need to stop this developing Cold War. That's the point. And all that Obama and Biden have done is to escalate that. And so we got the Davos elite are searching for fixes to save their system from the populists. This is a Bloomberg article linked by Drudge. They talk about how the IMF chief, Christine Lagarde, is urging programs to placate the people who have seen their lives and their expectations destroyed by globalism, the people they call the precariat. Remember, these are the people who gave us Marxism. Even though they are capitalists, they have funded Marxism. It was German central bankers who put Lenin on a sealed train from Switzerland with $10 million to start the Russian Revolution. And they love to use whatever they can, whether it is Marxism or whether it is Islamic jihad, to forward their agenda. They're not above using anything. And now they're talking about universal basic income to make everybody dependent upon the governments, because they're going to take away our ability to do anything. They're going to have the robots manufacturing everything, so we become helpless little snowflakes that are just watching everything happen around us. Meanwhile, we have all these people, of course, who are diehard fans of the Democrats like Politico. And here's this headline from them: Unleash the Biden. Unleash the Biden. They say, as they struggle with the challenge of the most unpredictable and unpresidential president in American history. No editorializing there, is there? Democrats face a vexing problem. The leader of the other party is strangely charismatic. Okay, but, we just need to have a spokesperson on the Democrat side. So unleash this Biden. And as I wrote to myself and said, don't throw us into that briar patch. Yeah, please unleash the Biden. This guy who is he gaffe prone as well? I think he is kind of gaffe prone. In the meantime, we've also got this article that's coming out of The Wire, linked by Drudge. Trump needs to learn how to cry. So I guess he needs to get in touch and channel his inner Biden, because Biden just wears his emotions on his sleeve. Say, Donald Trump has one big lesson to learn from outgoing U.S. President Barack Obama. He needs to learn to be cool about crying. And I remember we had a video that we went back, a fake video of Obama crying. So maybe that's maybe Donald Trump could go back and watch that report, study the acting techniques of Barack Obama, and get some tears on, or maybe just put something in his eyes to make him do that the actors use. I say, if he could just squeeze one tear out during his inauguration, people will turn around quite quickly their feelings toward him, said a British behavioral expert. Yeah. Why would he be crying? He won. He won. They're the losers. They should be crying. They've got a lot to cry about. And they've been whining ever since the election. And it's getting really tiresome to hear their cries. As I pointed out, we're going to have former Secret Service agent Gary Byrne, who's going to be talking about the other things that they may be trying to do. Meanwhile, we have this article from Washington Times saying that Obama scores poorly in working with Congress on legislation. They say they have a legislative index. They capture his struggles to find ways to work with Congress, ranged from lukewarm to openly hostile. Yeah, he has been openly hostile. Remember that it's Barack Obama who has used the executive order in major ways to get what he wanted. And he said, as an excuse, well, I gave Congress a chance to do this, and they didn't, so I just did an executive order. That's not what the Constitution is about. It doesn't say that we have these divided lines of power here, and if you, as the executive branch, don't get what you want from the other branches, you just override them as a dictator. That has been the hallmark of Obama's administration. And now they've got all these articles pushing back and saying, well, if you look at the quantity of executive orders that he's done, it's not that much more. Yeah, it's more than these other guys have done, but not that much more. Look, it's the magnitude of what each of these executive orders do. As I pointed out yesterday, we had executive orders from JFK and from George W. Bush talking about how wide the margins were going to be on executive orders. That's pretty minor stuff. But when you go in and you take land that is equivalent to 3 times the area of Texas, and now it's been more because he's put in a rush at the last minute. That calculation has gotten pretty old. And do it saying that you're using a 1906 Antiquities Protection Act. That is an abuse of that law. It has absolutely nothing to do with it. I hope Donald Trump strikes that down and undoes the massive land confiscation that Barack Obama has done. And of course, it is all part, again, of the universal basic income, the Agenda 21, keeping people confined to the cities. You have to get rid of the people who are making a living on the land, growing food, mining minerals, harvesting dead wood lumber out of national forests. You have to stop that. You have to get those people off of the land. You have to make it impossible for them to earn a living. Meanwhile, when we come back, we're going to talk real briefly about areas where Trump and the Democrats could make a deal. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And we're going to talk about Chelsea Manning and what's happening with that. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next hour, we're going to be joined by Gavin McInnes. And in the third hour, we're going to be joined by Gary Byrne, a former Secret Service agent. We're going to talk to him about security issues that have been on the forefront in the lead up to the inauguration on Friday. And also, we have a report from Alex Jones that's going to be coming up, talking about the report we had yesterday that from Roger Stone, that he survived an assassination attempt. Alex Jones is going to be breaking that down further for us coming up later in the show. Now, before we get back to the news, I just want to remind you that the sale that we began 2017 with, Make Our Bodies Great Again initiative, that sale will be ending with the inauguration. It'll be ending very soon. Just got a couple of days left on that, and that is 20 to 30% off some of our most popular supplements to help you get started with a healthier 2017, to get started in that habit. And of course, we've got 30% off Brain Force, Super Male Vitality, Survival Shield X2, Nascent Iodine. We also have 20% off Prostagard, Liver Shield, Secret 12, our vitamin B12 supplement, and Knockout, a natural sleep aid. You'll find those and many others at InfoWarsLife.com. And of course, once you find the supplement mixture that you want to use, do the research there, look at the reviews. You can make sure that you are never out of stock if you sign up for AutoShip. If you do that, you get a 10% discount on everything that you put on AutoShip. And if your recurring order is $50 or more, you get free shipping as well. So that's a great way to start your New Year's habits of healthier living. Also, we have a new special, our inauguration preparedness special, 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select Storable Food, and you'll find that at InfoWarsStore.com. That's select food with a storage shelf life of 25 years, all made in the USA. Great packaging, very durable, and resealable once you open it. So you'll find that at 30 to 40% off right now at InfoWarsStore.com. A great time to stock up. Now, we were just talking about how poorly Obama has scored in working with Congress. And as they point out in this Washington Times article, they say that during the last 8 years, he's signed 1,227 bills into law. Now, that may sound like a lot, okay, but it's not that many. And they say it's even less than one-term Presidents Carter and George H.W. Bush. They say digging deeper into the numbers, Congress spent less time in session, handled fewer business on the chamber floors, and generally sputtered for most of Obama's tenure. This is a problem with Congress as much as it is with a president and using his executive orders. Because it's a problem when Obama says, I didn't get what I wanted from you guys because, you were elected just like me, but you're representing your constituents who have a different opinion of what I want to do. I can't get you to agree on this legislation, so I'm just going to do it with executive order. That's a big problem, and we've talked about that on Obama's side a lot, but there's also a problem on Congress's side. And when we look at the number of bills that are here, it highlights that the fact that Congress has less business on the floor, they spend less time in session, they've passed fewer laws, and that's not simply because of Obama. It's because Congress has abdicated its authority to the bureaucracy, and there's no better example of that than the EPA. And I pointed out as we were looking at the EPA's actions, especially wrapping this up towards the end here, that the EPA, well, it's not just the EPA, but overall, you had 3,400 regulations that came from the bureaucracy in 2015. Only 87 laws were passed. So we now have a situation where we have regulation without representation. And the worst thing about these bureaucratic laws are they don't come with the protection of real laws. So they have the force and effect. They can put draconian punishment on you. You don't have the presumption of innocence. You don't have the protections in the Constitution, so they say. That's the real problem with it. Have more on that on the other side of the break. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next segment, we're going to be talking to Gavin McInnes. He's on his way to the Deplorable. He's going to be there. And we're going to talk to him about the inauguration, about some of the things that are happening there, what he expects to see. Should be very interesting. I think I'm also going to talk to him a little bit about the NFL and its plunging popularity. They're telling us that Donald Trump is plunging in popularity, but the real metrics show that just the opposite. These are the people, again, who told us that Hillary Clinton was going to win massively. And, of course, that didn't happen. They were telling us that right up to the day of the election. They're now telling us that Donald Trump is sinking in the polls. He is the most unpopular according to their own polls. They said, look, we have unjustly criticized him as being a racist just before Martin Luther King Day, and look at how effective our attacks have been. Well, I don't know that they are effective. And when we look at real metrics like NFL attendance, I think that we see that the people who have been pushing the agenda coming from the mainstream media that has been reflected in the cultural issues that we see with the NFL, I think those are the people who are really plunging in real metrics, things like viewership and tickets sold, that type of thing. So we'll talk to him about a wide variety of cultural issues. I want to get back, though, to this issue of should our laws be written by an unelected bureaucracy or should they be done by elected representatives? And, of course, our elected representatives have abdicated this stuff. And going back to when Nancy Pelosi said, we have to pass it so we can see what's in it. That's really what she was talking about. I know it sounded absurd, and it is an absurd situation that we would have legislation without representation. And that's where we are today. Of course, we have taxation without representation too, you could say. But clearly, we have a bureaucracy that creates these laws, says that they're civil laws, not criminal laws, so they're not bound by the prohibitions of excessive fines, excessive punishment. They don't have to give us the presumption of innocence when they take us to trial. They don't have to follow these the things that we have in the Constitution to protect that. They can do civil asset forfeiture. They can do all of these things because they're bureaucratic rules. That's a big problem. And the imbalance, as I point out, 2015, 87 laws versus 3,400 regulations that came out. That is the issue. Will that change under Donald Trump? I hope it will. And as we look at these cabinet hearings today, and as we look at Pruitt, who is coming up for the EPA hearing, that's going to be a very contested hearing. One of the reasons we need Pruitt there is because he's an attorney general who's been very effective at pushing back against the illegal, unconstitutional overreach of one of these point agencies, the EPA. And he's saying, you don't have the constitutional authority to do that. We need somebody who respects the law for a change over these regulatory agencies, if we even have an EPA. You know, quite frankly, I remember a time when there wasn't an EPA. It was created by Richard Nixon, and I wish we would go back to the time when we didn't have an EPA. The good that they have done has been so far outweighed by the bad, and they have become the point people for pushing this globalist takeover, this justification for global taxation, this justification for global governance, because you have to have taxation if you're going to support a government. So they got to come up with some global problem that they have to invent so that they can justify a tax that they can use to fund their global governance. That's what this is all about at the very bottom of it. So he doesn't buy into that. There's going to be a debate on climate change. As the New Republic says, science will be on trial. You know, let's have some real science. Let's get to a situation where we stop arguing that it is settled. Science is never settled. Even the speed of light, we're now seeing scientists come, well, you know, I don't know that that's true or not. See, science is never settled. It's always subject to reinvestigation, reevaluation, and new theories. We had it settled that the Earth was the center of the universe, and they had a very good model that predicted planetary movement. And that was all destroyed. And we said, no, the sun was the center. It took them a while because they had round orbits instead of elliptical orbits for a while. They had to have Kepler modify that. That's one of the reasons why everybody was pushing back against Galileo. So we need good science. We need skepticism. Don't say you're a denier. Don't tell us the majority of people say this. The majority have usually been wrong about everything in science. Gavin McInnes will be with us when we return. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and joining me now is Gavin McInnes. No stranger to those of you who listen to InfoWars. We've had him on several times. He's the host of the Gavin McInnes Show on Compound Media. You can find that at compoundmedia.com. He's also a frequent contributor for national television and a contributor for Rebel Media. And you can follow him on Twitter at Gavin_McInnes. And joining us now is Gavin McInnes. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, David. Happy to be here.
Now, you're on your way to the deplorable. I want to talk to you a little bit about what you expect to find there. We've had a lot of reports last couple of days. We talked to about the Project Veritas report yesterday. And, of course, there's been other things that have been coming out about people planning things for the deplorable. It looked like they said that they were going to release some butyric acid, which is enough to make you puke because it smells like puke. It's the essence that gives you that smell there. Don't know if that's going to happen now that that's been exposed. Hopefully that won't. But you're going to be at the deplorable with Alex Jones and others. Tell us what you expect to see.
Well, assuming that they are true to their word, they've promised paint, red paint. They're going to throw on us. They've promised us. The organizers told me they were talking about throwing human feces and urine at us as we walk in. And then the butyric acid also in the vents. But isn't it interesting that there's deplorable and then there's the inauguration the next day, and these psychopaths have put about as much energy into sabotaging both. So to them, private citizens dressing up nice and going to have a drink together is as evil and as much of a threat as the president that they think is Hitler being sworn into office.
Yeah, I guess you got to leave off your tuxedo and take a hazmat suit in order to go there, right?
Oh, I will be bringing a raincoat. I'll also be bringing anything I can legally bring for my defense. I mean, yeah, you can't bring a knife or a gun, but you can bring a large flashlight, and there's all kinds of other tools you can bring to fight them. But I'm happy to meet violence with violence. And these guys, what's amazing about them is they're not scared. Like, they're picking a fight with us, and they assume that we're going to be the same beta male cucks that they are and shy away. I'm happy to fight any of them. And even when these bikers, I can't remember how many it was. Was it 2,000 or 20,000?
Yeah, I don't know. There's these bikers that say they're going to form a wall of meat. I think that's a colorful phrase, a wall of meat.
Beautiful, isn't it? And you know what they say to those bikers? They go, pshaw. They said, those three bikers, those gangs, they are having a rivalry right now. So they're going to be too busy fighting each other to fight us. And you go, guys, this is real life now. You're picking fights with people that you can't fight. And even in the Veritas videos, we had this guy, he's got a really weird name, like Lagrabe Carrefour or something, Lagarde. And he said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put chains around subway tracks. Yeah. Now, you're going to jail for domestic terrorism, you realize. And he's still on Twitter. He's sort of a tranny. He's doing his eyelashes and stuff, saying, ooh, the conservatives are real mad. And then this other guy, Luke Kuhn, who we now find out had a meeting yeah, that's the guy. But Luke Kuhn is this other guy. We find out that he had the meeting at Comet Pizza. We find out all this other stuff about him being a pedophile. And he's talking about burning your house down and fighting the police. And he's still around, hanging out. And I was just saying to James O'Keefe an hour ago, I go, you realize this is the part in the story where you dye your hair blonde and you're in the back of a windowless van starting your new life. Like, at least Bill Ayers knew that you go to jail for this stuff.
Yeah, well, there's a new sheriff in town, or there will be a new sheriff in town. I don't think we're going to see Attorney General Sessions taking this stuff lightly, like we saw Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch take it lightly when people were threatened at polling places and that sort of thing. They allowed that to continue to happen. I don't think they're going to take this kind of intimidation, this kind of conspiracy to commit serious crimes. I don't think they're going to take that lightly.
Yeah, well, in their defense, I can't believe I'm defending them, but in their defense, these dummies have been told that they can do whatever they want for the past 8 years. I mean, even today in the New York Post, we learned about this Puerto Rican terrorist, this separatist from FALN, who is just being released after 55 years, even though he blew up and murdered 4 people. Mm-hmm. So they've been taught since their entire adult life that you can literally get away with murder. And so they're just gallivanting through, throwing acid in heating vents, attacking people, throwing feces on them like there's going to be no consequences, laughing in bikers' faces. And it's ironic because this is why Trump won, because we've had enough of you spoiled brats.
And you talk about these terrorists, and we got this guy who set himself on fire in front of the Trump Hotel shouting, Trump, Trump. I mean, talk about a self-destructive urge here. But he couldn't even do that right, Gavin. I have no respect, no sympathy for somebody who would do that. He did it to himself. Nobody else set him on fire. He did it to himself. So I feel perfectly fine to laugh at somebody who is that incompetent. Like I said earlier, it's like trying to shoot yourself in the head and missing.
Well, wasn't there another guy who was talking about cutting his penis off?
Go ahead. See if I care. Oh, that's going to really bother me if you do that, right?
Go nuts. Well, they had a woman in Spain, too. She just went, there was a wax structure of Trump that they had out front, and she runs around and takes her top off and is dancing around with her tits flopping everywhere. And you go, okay, I don't understand what you're doing. Am I going, no, stop.
Can't take it anymore. Well, there's also some people that have had their jars of urine and feces and paint confiscated here in Texas at the State House. So this is the kind of thing that they do on a regular basis. I mean, we had the protests that we went to cover at one of the abortion places here in Austin. And, of course, they had nothing to say. They had people who were there with signs saying, a beating heart is a life and that type of stuff. So they didn't have anything to say. They would go there with completely black signs just to hold them up in front of the anti-abortion signs because they have no argument. They simply want to censor what you have to say.
Isn't that what fascism is? Isn't that what communism is? Yeah. They say they're about freedom. Okay, debate me. Why do you want to throw feces at me? Let's sit down. I'd love to explain to you why Trump is an important president, but they don't want that. In fact, they often carry those little sirens, those meh things, and they'll say their point, and then you go to counter it with, all countries have borders or something like that, and they'll go meh in your face, and you just go, and then they'll start spitting, and you go, you're not just a fascist, you're a mentally ill fascist.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's part of what we have seen in the run-up to the election, when they would go to all of these massive crowds, unprecedented, the number of people that would show up just to hear Donald Trump speak. You know, they had some large crowds for Obama, but that was he was part of a concert that was there. They always had bands that were playing, so he was kind of the warm-up act for the bands, or they were the warm-up act for him. But people were showing up to hear Donald Trump just talk off the cuff for about 70 to 90 minutes. And they didn't want to hear anything. They didn't want to talk about anything. They wanted to get confrontational people's faces. And then when something happened, who threw the first punch? Well, no, he did it. No, he did it. You know, it's kind of a he said, she said. So that's why it was so important for James O'Keefe to do this undercover investigation and to go in and say, look, this is what they're planning to do. We know who's planning to start this, who's going to throw the first punch. They're talking about punching people in the throats, other things like that. So, you know, we know, and we knew that from watching these other events. We knew who was starting it, but of course they love to play the other side, and the media plays along with them and sells their narrative. This is part of busting that narrative before it happens. Yeah, and
Roger Ailes always likes to say this. He goes, just take any situation and flip it, and you can see how absurd it is. Can you imagine InfoWars? Can you imagine David Knight sitting there talking about sabotaging subways, talking about burning people's houses down, throwing feces? Yeah. I mean, the feds would be there that afternoon. If we said any of the stuff they did, they would be apoplectic. And we even see this with the stadiums, with these rallies. You go in there, by the way, you're hired by George Soros. You go in there, you say, Trump sucks, screw Trump. You're giving the finger to everyone in the entire stadium. So we're talking about picking a fight with 10,000 people. Then one guy punches you in the face on the way out, and you go, look how violent they are. Well, go to a rap concert and say rap sucks in the middle of the stadium. Mm-hmm. Go wear an NYPD shirt to a Young Thug concert and tell me how well you do. The fact that these guys got away with one punch, shows how totally rational we are.
We're talking about flipping the situation. I mean, you know, think about if you flip the situation with that mentally impaired white guy that was being beaten and cut and forced to say F Trump and F white people and everything. Imagine if that was flipped. If that was 4 white thugs doing that to a black person, saying, you got to say F Obama and everything, streaming that out there. And we don't really even have to imagine what the media would do with that, because we saw it with Tawana Brawley, even though that ultimately turned out to be phony. We saw how the media didn't have video of that because it didn't happen. And that was back in the day when we didn't have live streaming video of everything that's going on. But we saw what the media did with that. We saw what Al Sharpton did with that. So we don't even have to presume what would happen if it was flipped. We saw it with Tawana Brawley, even though it was totally fake.
We saw that with rumors. Look at Ferguson was based on a rumor, which, by the way, Obama foments these rumors when he says Trayvon Martin could have been my son. He doesn't care about the trial where we learned that he was fighting Zimmerman. He doesn't care that Michael Brown didn't have his hands up. But we take these rumors, because here's the real crux of the issue here. There is a massive demand for bigotry. There's a massive demand for racism and xenophobia and homophobia and all that stuff, sexism, because it explains failure. And it diminishes our success. So there must be an explanation for this inequality in the world. I don't want it to be merit-based, so I'm just going to say, you're being evil to me, that's why I'm screwed. Unfortunately, when you have a myth like this, you don't have, the supply doesn't meet the demand. So they just start conjuring up racism out of nowhere. They go, oh, cops are shooting blacks on the street. Women don't make as much as men. There's gay bashing every day. Trannies, there's a war on trannies. They're dead on the streets. And you go, none of that is true. And your lies, Obama and media, are starting riots. We got 5 cops shot in Dallas based on a lie. We got black protesters shooting black protesters dead because a riot is going on. We got kids in Ferguson stabbing fire hoses so they can't put out the fire that these kids started.
Absolutely. Hang on there. We got to take a quick break, Gavin. We'll be right back with Gavin McInnes. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Gavin McInnes. And we, just as we went to the break, Gavin was talking about the Black Lives Matter narratives that have always focused, Gavin, on the most controversial issues. I mean, we have situations, and of course, we've had Adrian Schoolcraft in New York, and we've also had Frank Serpico talking about the fact that we need to make sure that any institution can be corrupted. You can have and you will have bad individuals in any institution. But you have to be able to purge those individuals, and yet they specifically choose the incidents that either the narrative that's being put out is not true, or they get something that is very controversial and not clear-cut. That's what they always focus on because they want to keep that conflict going. They don't want to solve the problems. And part of not solving the problem is to say, hey, you got bad cops, it's simply racism. No, you have bad cops for other reasons, and if you're going to redirect people over here to racism for your own demagogue advantage to try to break people into these different competing groups, that's the way they keep in power. If you're going to do that, you're going to take people's focus away from what the real issue is.
Yeah, why don't they disavow? Let's play their game for a while. Now that we're in the driver's seat, let's make them do this. And James O'Keefe just did this an hour ago. He was saying, when are you lefties going to disavow these protesters who want to put acid in air vents? Because Mark Ruffalo and Michael Moore and Lena Dunham and Alec Baldwin, they're all having some big ceremony where they're going to dance around and pretend that Trump's not going to be president. And O'Keefe says, I want you to disavow. Like, Trump is expected to have an opinion on David Duke all of a sudden because David Duke mentions him. Okay, if we have to skip and dance every time you say racism, let's see you skip and dance. When your radicals say something like, what do we want dead cops? When do we want them now? And then 5 cops get murdered by the new Black Panthers in Dallas. Let's see you disavow them. Yeah,
exactly. And, when they're very selective about that. As I was saying throughout this week, we got John Lewis, who chooses to revive this racism attack against Donald Trump in the run-up to Martin Luther King Day. I said, look, he's known for the Freedom Riders, and yet you've got this guy that the left dearly loves, Morris Dees, who founded the Southern Poverty Law Center. And what was his involvement? His sole involvement in the civil rights movement was to defend the people who pulled these people out of the buses, severely beat them, and set the buses on fire. Morris Dees defended that Ku Klux Klan leader, then set out the civil rights movement, then for money got back in the Southern Poverty Law Center. Has John Lewis, disavowed this guy? Of course he hasn't. They didn't disavow Robert Byrd. They continue to go down this path for these people. And yet you see John Lewis constantly calling every single Republican candidate, whether it's John McCain or Mitt Romney, calling them the racists, calling them Ku Klux Klan, calling them George Wallace, and then even attacking Bernie Sanders. And I think that was a key thing. Bernie Sanders came out and said, look, this is just words, because Bernie Sanders knows that John Lewis is such a partisan hack. He's not just a Democrat. He's a Hillary Clinton Democrat. He'd even attack Bernie Sanders and say Bernie Sanders had nothing to do with the civil rights movement when he did.
It's victimhood culture, and victimhood culture is lucrative. That's what I think we have to understand about that. There's an economic component to this. There are dozens, hundreds, thousands of jobs based on the lie that America is in the 1940s. And Trump here is here to say, we're done. No more victimhood status. It's a meritocracy now. And communists and mentally ill artists and all these race hustlers, their entire career is predicated on this myth. And when you shatter it, they start to panic. They're having a meltdown now because the jig is up and all of a sudden they have to work. That's why they want to attack a ball as much as the inauguration, because we are people using our own money, minding our own business, enjoying ourselves, and they hate that. They hate freedom, they hate meritocracy, and they hate fun. And you guess what all those 3 things are when you put them together? They're America.
Yeah,
these people
exactly.
hate their own country.
Now, you're on a list of people that the left have published out as a target list for the deplorable. They are not content just to try to release the smell of vomit through the ventilation system, but they want to specifically come after you, Alex Jones, Joe Biggs, Roger Stone, and Gavin McInnes. And of course, she said, all of you, and I'm telling you what, these people are biting off more than they can chew, because I know that Joe Biggs and Alex Jones can more than handle themselves. They don't need a wall of meat from 5,000 bikers for Trump. They can do it themselves against these people.
I was just saying to Cernovich about the deployable. I thought if any of them do sneak in, my biggest fear is that the security will get to them before we do. I'm going to be sort of protecting them and saying, shh, keep it down, come over here, We have to get you away from the cops. I'm scared of the cops doing their job.
That's right. You want a piece of me? That's what it's going to be like. Absolutely amazing. Well, and these are the people, again, who cannot even set themselves on fire successfully. I mean, that's how pathetic this is. I still can't get over this guy who tried to set himself on fire. Thank you so much, Gavin McInnes. And, of course, you can follow him on the Gavin McInnes Show. And what is the name of that network that you have? It's broadcast?
Compoundmedia.com, tackymag.com, therebel.media.
Great. Thank you very much, Gavin McInnes. And stay with us when we come back. We're going to have Alex Jones. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. As we were just talking to Gavin McInnes and all the crazy things that people are willing to do to get across their political agenda. We see this now in the reports that are surfacing leading up to the inauguration, leading up to the balls, especially the deplorable. And as we look at the uncertainty of the storms that we've seen this last week, remember that now is a good time to prepare for that kind of uncertainty, to stock up on storable food. And we have now put in an inauguration preparedness special, 30 to 40% off InfoWars Select storable food at Infowars.com. Just as you saw last week, all the shelves being emptied in the wake of the snowstorm or the ice storm. And who knows what is going to happen? You might even just have a massive spike in the price of food. Now is the time to prepare so that you have food, that you can afford. You're not going to be hit with a shortage either because of money or because you just simply can't get it on the shelf. This is a great way to provide for your family, for yourself. And of course, when it is discounted this much, 30 to 40% off the retail price of all InfoWars Select storable food now at InfoWarsStore.com. This has a shelf life of 25 years. It's a great way to even out the price increases, to make sure that it's going to be there for you. It has got great packaging, and it is resealable. All made in the U.S., no GMO, and you can get it now for 30 to 40% off. Also, our specials for InfoWars Life, we started the year with a special 20 to 30% off various products, our most popular products. That is still in effect. That is going to be ending the end of this week. Again, 30% off Brain Force, 30% off Super Male Vitality, 30% off Survival Shield X2 Nascent Iodine. We also have 20% off Prostagard, Liver Shield, Secret 12. That's our vitamin B12 liquid formulations. Very easy to take, very easy for your body to assimilate, and 20% off Knockout, our all-natural sleep aid. You'll see that and many others at InfoWarsLife.com. That sale will be ending along with the inauguration, so don't miss your chance to stock up on that. Now, yesterday, we had Roger Stone come on, and he talked to Alex Jones, said he's been very sick. We have an article up talking about what he had to say. Trump operative Roger Stone survives assassination attempt. He said the general consensus is that I was poisoned. He was concerned about that. I've got a report here from Alex Jones about the deep state versus journalists.
Well, I hope MSNBC and CNN and all the college kids that got recruited by intelligence agencies are proud of yourself. What you got recruited by was a foreign corporate coup over our nation state with the admitted plan to bankrupt our society, to turn us into abject chattel financial slaves. And right now you're getting your asses kicked royale. You are getting your asses handed to you. And you don't understand that if you keep pushing, the real guns haven't even come out yet politically. You're being punched by big old fat gloves right now. Buckley, what are the biggest gloves they can wear in boxing?
16 ounces or something?
I mean, the big gloves are on right now. Look at this traffic. You know, I'm teleprompter free. So it is, what happens is I pull up this big image of all the data and all the research and all the info, and then I start going into it. And as I jump from one piece to another, my brain starts accelerating until my mouth can't keep up with the data. So I'm just going to really try to be calm here and break this down. I was told by high-level sources that I needed to watch being poisoned about a month and a half ago, right after Trump won. And I got multiple calls from Virginia, from Houston, from people saying, you need to really watch out. And the word is so I guess I need to call the FBI and tell them about this, is that they might use a radioactive isotope on you like polonium. And you hear this stuff, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah. There was that Litvinenko triple agent. Thought he was a Russian agent, really a British agent. They thought he was an agent back to the Russians. So he gets poisoned with it. And then the MI6 operative who's working with him, the guy that gets poisoned with polonium, is the guy that leaks the Trump PP-gate dossier. You can't make this up. Since we broke this yesterday, it's in the newspapers. The newspapers are looking at it and going, God, this is confirmed. And Roger Stone, about 2 weeks ago, I'd just gone on family vacation, a workcation. And he said, yeah, no, they just sent out the feds out to my house. I was in the hospital for weeks. He had never been in the hospital in his life since he was born. That was the second time in the hospital in his life. And he said, it's polonium poisoning, but they're saying it's national security because only a state-sponsored actor could have this isotope that can only be made in the biggest reactors, basically. So it has a signature. He said, what do you think's behind it? I said, well, clearly it's meant to kill you, and then they just blamed the Russians and said they were getting rid of one of their assets. I said, with the Litvinenko case, it was connected back to MI6. And I wasn't even making the connection then that it was the same MI6 handler spy that was attacking Trump and Stone and everybody that was tied to that. I was doing research for it a few days after that and was like, holy Toledo, it's the same guy. So this has, huge import. Well, here's the whole story. So Stone goes, okay, give me the medical records. And then the guys with the, crew cuts come back to the house and, well, it's national security, blah, blah, blah. And so he's having his lawyers involved in all this because they don't obviously want him waving around that he was hit with polonium. So he's going to get private tested right now. But I mean, this happened. Stone looks like hell. I like Stone. He's a friend of mine now. Known him for 2 years. I met him like 5 years ago, but he looks 10 years older. His face looks like it's almost paralyzed. His, the radiation or the toxic effects all over his face. I really feel sorry for the guy. And he's so worried about defeating the globalists. He's so mission-oriented. He hardly even wanted to talk about this. He wanted to make it all about how they were going to call him before Congress. Well, let's set the stage here. Roger Stone was demonized by a whole bunch of members of Congress, Adler, you name it, all over the news, saying Roger Stone's behind the WikiLeaks, Roger Stone's behind the DC attacks, the leaks, Roger Stone. And then you've got this DNC staffer getting shot 4 times in the back, Seth Rich. See, journalists are being targeted. Whistleblowers are being targeted. I think I members of Congress calling for Snowden and Bradley Manning's death. So all this is going on. All this is happening. And right as he's trying to finish his book on all this, exposing it, right as they're, quote, going to call him to Congress in the next month now, as the star witness that he's this Russian agent, he gets hit with polonium. Probably didn't drink the whole drink. I don't know how he got administered because it takes 24 to 48 hours to hit. You think it's the worst flu of your life. Your body's just trying to get it out of there. You name it. So they want to get rid of him. And you ask, who has the motive? The criminal elements that have infiltrated our government, the criminal infiltrators of the, quote, deep state. But this has happened to Stone. It's just crazy that it was floated around to me that I should just have the message that the Justice Department's investigating me. Loretta Lynch, that meets on airplanes with Bill Clinton, totally illegal. And that Nancy Pelosi's really pissed at me. Then Pelosi's daughter goes on TV before I've announced this and says that I'm death threatening her and have to be dealt with. Never said anything like that about her. So they've just got themselves all hyped up in this frenzy, I guess because they're behind the scenes giving orders or whatever. And I guess they're all playing James Bond now. This is a real world you're in. Everybody knows things are a two-way street. But when the Democratic leader's daughter, she's like, Alex Jones's people are death threatening me. I'm scared. He's bad. Shut him up. Shut him up. And Hillary's naming me. Obama's naming me. They're passing laws to start shutting down the free press. They list Drudge, InfoWars, and Roger Stone is fake news. Fake news, my ass. Oh, like we told you Trump was going to win. Was that fake news? We've even caught him trying to plant fake stories on the site. I mean, it has been like a James Bond movie, folks. And you can read the articles on Infowars.com. The Daily Mail did a big breakdown on our exclusive interview yesterday. But this is a big, big deal. And you've got Seth Rich getting shot in the back. You've got what happened to Stone. You've got the fact that I was told by multiple sources that Hillary's who you have to worry about if she loses. And Soros and these people, because they have a rule. If they lose politically, they go to the next level. It's like when they spend $5 billion of U.S. taxpayer money, something like $1 billion of Soros's money to overthrow Ukraine. They go on TV and admit they overthrew Ukraine so they can brag about it. Then they say the Russians are making it up that the Russians invaded Ukraine. I thought that I even agree with the Russians. Soros admits they overthrew Ukraine, but then they come out and say, but it's insane. Russia did it all. I mean, Russia threw off their oligarchs, that are the very same people we've got ruling us. That's the only solidarity we've got with Russia. And they're fellow human beings, and I'm not out to get Russia. If Russia does anything, if Russia gets caught promoting socialism or communism, which they're going away from, or coming after my guns, I will come out against the Russians so damn quick it'll make your head spin. I am a loyal American, as loyal as it gets. With the history, the fight, the proof, and the pedigree, the whole 9 yards. But the truth is, it's the globalists that are screwing us over, pissing on our face, telling us our kids don't belong to us, trying to bankrupt things, trying to run the country off a cliff. I mean, you see the propaganda everywhere. I saw the cover of Time magazine, incoming with a helicopter landing, Air Force 2, or Marine 2, or Marine 1, whatever it's called. Teleprompter free. Is it Marine 1, Buckley?
Marine 1.
Yeah, Marine 1. And it's all Obama's fighting as hard as he can to stop the collapse that Trump's going to cause. And here's his survival guide. And I read the stupid article. It's total inversion. Everything they say in there, they're doing to sabotage Trump and America. Folks, for 3 years, they've been letting leprosy and TB over the border. Okay, not even treating people that have it. They're like, oh, well, shut up. You're against diseases? There is a scorched earth program to bankrupt and wreck the country, and we even have the documents in the WikiLeaks. So there's a great editorial cartoon on Infowars.com. At least it was still there this morning. It was up Interstate. And it's an Evel Knievel car, Cadillac, running off Snake Mountain with Obama driving, with Uncle Sam in the back with his hat flying off, and sitting in the shotgun seat is Trump. And he says, all right, get ready to take the wheel. That's the truth, not Time Magazine, or was it Newsweek? I read it on the airplane. Marine 1 landing coming in, and it says, oh my gosh, can Obama help Trump not destroying himself? I mean, give me a break. And it's like we've elected a bunch of babies in the last administration. Drudge has a great image of it. Says the last days or the party's over. And it just shows all these whiny little bitches that had some score to settle. They had daddy issues with white male America when you dumbasses have been in charge. And it's been a bunch of weirdo white males that are basically bossing you around, and you just wrecked the culture, wrecked the society. Let me pull up Drudge. Man, I gotta tell you, it's just incredible. There we go, party's over. Oh, he's got it red linked. Trump operative Roger Stone's survives assassination attempt. I'm sorry. See that? But look here, the party's over. Look at their faces. just learning about media control, corporate media control, and why they're dying. They have to wait to get orders and authorization from Ohio to go with something. So we break this bombshell about Roger Stone on air. Normally, White House run Media Matters attacks us within 30 minutes when we say something big. We can say the sky's blue, they say it's, black. Nothing from them. Nothing from CNN, nothing on. Our stories go completely viral. Drudge links to it, and then the Mail links to it, and does a report, but then nobody else covers it. Why is the Daily Mail bigger than the New York Times? Because they report the information. Why is Drudge bigger than the New York Times and Facebook combined? Same story. Because we're not controlled. We don't answer to anybody. Same thing as Donald Trump. Donald Trump answers the Constitution, and that's it. He's got some issues with it, but, at least he means well. And when I look at the left and just how crazy they've gotten, and I keep saying this, you're not the left. You're not the left. You're not the left. Left, right, what does that mean? I have the whole history of it. The average leftist doesn't know what left hand means. Left means sinister or left hand. It's associated with the feminine in general history. And it's associated with dishonor, treachery, lies, the devil. That's the thing about left and right. I don't think that's fair towards women, but there you go. But if you look at the Jacobins and the first leftist movement, that's what they called it, it was a Luciferian religion. This is in the history books. George Washington wrote about it in letters. You can read them online. Library of Congress. Scans of his own writing. Warning of it. And the French Revolution. So, the Republican establishment's horrible. They're part of the same leftist movement. So when I say transcend the left-right paradigm, I mean transcend that the establishment on the left and right are controlling us. It doesn't mean there isn't a left or right. Within a certain paradigm of analysis, and it's like a language. It doesn't mean a language is all-encompassing of reality. It's just a way to approximate and look at things. So, these are deviant people who do not like the fact that you're handsome, strong, and you can play the guitar, or that you're a great poet. That's why they always obsess with the arts and controlling the arts and controlling the distribution of the arts so they can poison the great spirit of humanity. That's their ritual. And they admit this. Everything's a big ritual. And they're losing control. Hollywood's folding, everything's falling. I made the point that they're hoping Communist China buys up the big 6 production houses because they're failing. And I made the point, my God, you people don't even get yourself straight. The communists have already taken over in China, so they don't want homosexuality taught to kids and tranny stuff and all this stuff. They execute you if you're gay in China. I'm not saying that's good. The news picked that up. I did a memo on it last week. I said, you want China to come in and take over because they're authoritarian and can back up Hollywood and because they're anti-American. But they'll execute you for your agenda, and they won't even let you air most of your films that they see as anti-family because they understand that the brand of sexual revolution you're selling was designed by the CIA, this is declassified, to end the family and bring down civilization. And again, you're like, well, wait, is it a communist program? No. The Rockefeller Foundation, the Ford Foundation, these big groups put all this out in the 50s and 60s, deployed it in the 60s and 70s, and they've done it. The black community had less illegitimacy in the 40s than whites do. Now it's upwards of 80-something%. That's weaponized control. MTV force-feeding gangster rap. Folks picked it up, converted their culture to being thugs. So everyone would ostracize them, put them in their own group. Everybody kills each other. You're ready for prison. They even had you wear your pants hanging down around your ass, saying, I'm a male whore in a prison. Punk me. Bend me over. And I mean, they can make people dress like prison sex slaves and make it cool because Sumner Redstone on MTV said so. See, Sumner Redstone hates you. All right, listen, I got to end this transmission. Next transmission, I might do one from the airport. Next transmission is going to be in D.C., Lord willing. Don't ever take anything for granted. I'm not being a drama queen about this. People that don't live in extraordinary situations or don't know that history's happening go, oh, yeah, right. Well, I mean, look at how we've changed the world. Look at how InfoWars has changed the world. Look at all the things we've done together. And then realize this is really happening. And the globalists do recognize that InfoWars and you, the listeners and viewers, were an integral part of taking the Republic back to a certain extent. We've gotten a beachhead in D.C. And so pray for us. Support us. Go to InfoWarsStore.com. Great products, big sales that end this weekend. 30% off on a bunch of the supplements and stuff. Non-GMO heirloom seeds, great water filters, everything. You know, the media makes jokes about water filtration. I drink bottled water, filtered water, period. Everybody knows. There's glyphosate and crap in there. You're crazy if you drink it. Support us. Spread the word. Spread the articles. Spread the videos. Spread the Roger Stone articles. And send a local talk show host in national media and say, why aren't you covering this? Because you're waiting till national news covers it, because you're smart enough to know you get fired if you ever report anything original, because you're controlled. And that's why you're losing your audience. And I understand it's a chicken or an egg, because you get fired if you report the truth, but you also fire yourself by not reporting the truth because nobody's listening. So if a tree fell in the forest, nobody was here to make a sound. Did it make a sound? Hey, those who the gods would destroy, they first make mad. Know that. The elite are going crazy. Maxine Waters going on TV and saying, we need to impeach Trump. He gets orders from Putin. Putin came up with the term crooked Hillary. I guess he came up with the term Coca-Cola, too. Or when I wiped my ass this morning, Putin was there, grooming my stool. This is ridiculous. But this is the insanity. The babies, the whining scum that realize you're being rejected. Doesn't mean some utopia is coming, but at least a bunch of scum, a bunch of moron idiots. You know, our time's coming to an end. I hope you stand down, globalist. All right, I'm going to be in D.C. covering things. They're trying to ban free speech. And they're going to, try to gas the event I'm going to speak at, and, death threats all over. It's what cowards do. Because they're cowards, death threats would, I guess, intimidate them. That's not working. Humanity's awakening. I'm Alex Jones, InfoWars.com. If you're watching this transmission, you are the hope, you are the resistance.
Again, that's Alex Jones on his way to Washington. He's going to be at the Deplore Ball. He's also going to be broadcasting from the inauguration. And as Gavin McInnes said, all these people plotting to disrupt the Deplore Ball, he said, my biggest concern is that security will stop them before I get a piece of them. If they want to get, they've got a list of people there, Alex Jones, Gavin McInnes, Joe Biggs. I tell you, you're going after the wrong people if you do that. They're going to be jumping into something they can't get out of. I want to switch now to this news about Obama's commutating the prison sentence of Chelsea Manning. Manning was given a 35-year sentence. Now we're told that he's going to be out in May, served 6 years. And, of course, it's interesting also because Julian Assange, back on January the 12th, said if Obama grants Manning clemency, Assange will agree to U.S. extradition despite clear unconstitutionality of the Department of Justice case. This came from WikiLeaks' Twitter feed. Then, yesterday, after this was announced, they came out and said Assange is confident of winning any fair trial in the U.S. Obama's Department of Justice prevented public interest defense and a fair jury. And the White House then came back and said, well, this was done independent of any offers, anything that was said by Mr. Assange, any public comments. The White House official said, I have no insight into Mr. Assange's travel plans. I can't speak to any charges or potential charges he may be facing from the Justice Department. So hopefully he is not going to be coming. I would be concerned for him to come even in a Trump administration. Certainly he's not going to get a fair trial under an Obama administration. I'm not confident with all the different comments that I've seen, especially from Republicans, that it would be a fair trial from Republicans either. We see Josh Earnest coming out and saying GOP is intellectually dishonest on the Manning pardon. They say you have complimented, these are the same Republicans on Capitol Hill who endorsed a man for president, who praised WikiLeaks, who defended the integrity of Julian Assange, even as he was trashing the patriotic men and women who work in the U.S. intelligence community. Well, you know what? It was Barack Obama, let's not forget, that had Manning in jail for the last 6+ years. That all happened in 2009. They're the ones who threw him in jail. And then there's this tweet that came out. This is an RT article. Judith Miller slammed on Twitter for saying that the Manning leaks killed people. And, of course, they point out in this article that Judith Miller, with her reporting, advocated invading Iraq in 2003 and has been blasted on Twitter after criticizing Obama's decision to commute Manning's prison sentence. She said, how many people have died? This is a woman who sold the war to the American public for the military-industrial complex. And so we should ask, how many people have been killed? What's the body count of the leaks that came out of WikiLeaks versus the lies that we were told by the unanimous intelligence committee? And we're going to talk about what we found out from Manning when we come back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We began talking in the last segment about Obama's pardon of Manning. Of course, this is a massive leak of a lot of State Department as well as U.S. military files. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to show you some of what was leaked. Of course, the infamous collateral damage videotape, collateral murder, actually. That's what it's called. That's the military calls it collateral damage. This tape was named collateral murder. We're going to take a look at that, but I want to wait till we're going to, that's a little bit of it right there. I'm going to wait to play that, and I'm going to wait to go down this long list of what we know, thanks to Private Manning. I'm going to wait until the next segment, because this segment is not carried by a lot of the radio affiliates, and I want to make sure that this information goes out, because people need to think about this as they hear this back and forth as to whether or not, how we should treat whistleblowers. Do we really want to know the truth? What was it that we learned, and is it something that we should have known as the American public? Did it expose criminal actions of our government, just as we learned from these leaks that we're told of, the Russians put out? We learned about Hillary Clinton and her actions and their efforts and their successful efforts working with the U.S. mainstream media, working with the DNC to hack the Democrat primary and make sure that they got Hillary Clinton as a nominee and not Bernie Sanders. We learned a lot about her private criminal actions with the Clinton Foundation, and I hope those are prosecuted. And let's not forget, as Obama pardons Manning, that it was Obama who put him in jail. And it was Hillary Clinton who is exposed by Manning's leaks. It was her State Department that was the brunt of a lot of this stuff. That's why there's so much bad blood between Hillary Clinton and Julian Assange. And so we see this article from The Hill. They're talking about how, on the Republican side, the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence report described people like Ed Snowden as a traitor who is a serial exaggerator, a fabricator with a pattern of intentional lying. Donald Trump has said that Snowden, when he's talking about Snowden, he said there's still a thing called execution. They say that's a sentiment that is echoed by Kansas Representative Mike Pompeo, who will presumably be the next CIA chief, who's been picked by Trump to head the CIA. Should Snowden be executed? Should Snowden be jailed? Or did he do us a service? Did he expose massive criminal actions by the NSA? Should we punish him for that? Should we not punish the NSA? And remember, when you look at all of this information, that this is not anything new. We were telling you that this was going on. We knew it was going on. InfoWars told you about it. We had NSA whistleblowers like William Binney. We had people like Thomas Drake. And interestingly enough, not even the George W. Bush administration went after those NSA whistleblowers. It was the Obama administration that went after them. And as I've pointed out multiple times, and I'll continue to point out, the legacy of Barack Obama is that he went after whistleblowers and journalists using the 1917 Espionage Act more than all the other presidents in the last 100 years combined. And here he is at the end trying to say, but I'm a good guy. I'm going to let Manning out of jail. When we look at this, I think Rand Paul had it right. He said, you want to punish Snowden? Punish the NSA as well. Remember that this goes back even before the whistleblowers. After 9/11, we had William Binney and others say, wait a minute. You're changing the way that you're collecting information. You're not spying on individuals. You are spying on Mr. and Mrs. Verizon. And that's the way that Rand Paul put it. And Rand Paul said, if you're going to punish one, you're going to punish the whistleblower, punish the people that he exposed as criminals. That's always the way they do this. Go back to the 1970s. Remember the church hearings. Remember the Pike hearings in the House. That was when we first learned that there was such a thing as the NSA. It was Pike that called the NSA in, that called the CIA in and said, why are you tapping the phones of Americans? Just like now they're doing the electronic information. That's when we first learned of the NSA. He said, where did you come from? They said, well, we have an executive order from the president, from President Truman. I want to see that. No, you can't see that, Congressman. That is the deep state, folks. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. Let's take a look at whether or not Manning should be released. Is Manning responsible for the deaths of people, or are the people who sold us the Iraq War that he reported on, are they more culpable on this? Who has the bigger kill list? Just as we were talking about in the last segment, as we look at the push against pardoning Snowden, Obama was called on to pardon Snowden, and of course basically said he wasn't going to do it. This goes back to the deep state, all the way back to the 1970s. That's when we learned, as I was saying in the last segment, the NSA existed. We didn't know the NSA existed until we had the Pike hearings in the House. You always hear about the Church Committee hearings. And one of the things that was very important to remember about that was that the central part of that they were concerned with was the fact that we had the CIA and the NSA, who had been set to protect us against foreign dangers, were coming home as instruments of tyranny, as the founders warned us. And they showed, so that clip right there where they're passing around the heart attack gun, said, yeah, we've got all these different assassination devices that we can take out political enemies and foreign leaders with, and you got Barry Goldwater there, and they're passing this around, and that's Frank Church in the Senate hearing. They made it about that. That's what everybody remembers. But the central part of it was the fact that they were tapping people's phones in America, doing it without warrants, and these organizations, the CIA and the NSA, whose briefs were to work against foreigners that were a threat to America, they turned inward and were coming after political enemies in the United States. They were very concerned about that. That's why they created the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. Fast forward 40 years and you find out that the FISA court is now becoming the court that we hear is amending the Constitution secretly. And it's not even a court. It's one judge, and you have a government lawyer that goes in and says, we'd like to do such and such, and that judge and that lawyer, who both work for the government, who both work in secret, said, yeah, sure, you can get a search warrant for Mr. and Mrs. Verizon, and you can amend the Constitution. We won't even tell anybody that it's been amended, but we'll all kind of, keep this amongst ourselves in the deep secret state. That's where this all began. And so when we look at what we learned from the NSA whistleblowers like William Binney and Thomas Drake, who, as I pointed out, were attacked by Barack Obama. It was not Bush who moved against them. It was Barack Obama who tried to set up Thomas Drake and send him to jail for a very long time for the possession of documents that were never classified, that he had, that were just personnel documents. There's like 4 documents. They tried to send him to jail for decades with that. So when we look at that, when we look at Snowden, when we look at Manning, understand that this is something that is the deep state, is something supported by Democrats and Republicans. And as I tweeted out earlier and mentioned, the Demopublicans, if they want to cry about lives that have been lost, about secrets that have been lost, why don't you first look at your wars that were based on lies? Why don't you first look at your leaks, your emails, your lack of security, your violations of security, Hillary Clinton, David Petraeus, and others? Your security violations were far worse than what came out with Manning. But I want to take a look at the pushback that people came back against Judith Miller. She was one of the people saying, well, how many people have died? And again, RT points out she was a journalist. She was working for the New York Times, I believe, at the time, when she was pushing. Yeah, she's a New York Times journalist. As I point out in RT, she cited dodgy, unnamed sources. Unnamed sources. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like the deep state that's coming against Donald Trump? Unnamed sources in her reporting for New York Times, talking about non-existent weapons of mass destruction, WMDs. And again, remember, it was unanimous, all 16 intelligence agencies. Now we got one more intelligence agency, and all 17 of them said the Russians hacked our elections. So these are the people you can trust, right? No, not really. And they point out it cost the lives of 4,424 U.S. troops, with 31,952 of them wounded, based on those lies. So Judith Miller, you have some culpability in this, as some of the people tweeted back. Judy's Judy's Iraq war starting stories are all based off of leaks. Those leaks killed hundreds of thousands. Ready to send your murderous sources to prison, Judy? Another one said, your lies contributed to the deaths of more than 170,000 people. You are a weapon of mass destruction. And of course, other people point out that the number of people total who died in Iraq were probably about 1 million people there alone. In an additional article, Miller claimed that Iraq had intentions of building an atomic bomb, and she wrote, Iraq has stepped up its quest for nuclear weapons and has embarked on a worldwide hunt for materials to make an atomic bomb. She also quoted an unnamed source, a low-level Iraqi scientist, who pointed to several spots in the sand where he said chemical precursors and other weapons material were buried. Well, there you go. That's what they did. And yet these are the people like that in the press who sold the lives of Republicans and Democrats, who cost millions of Iraqi lives, who cost over 4,000 U.S. soldiers' lives, who severely wounded 32,000 of them. These are the people saying Manning should stay in jail. What did Manning show us? I want to run this clip for you here. This is the clip that's been named Collateral Murder. This is the video, as Wall Street Journal points out. It's U.S. Army Apache helicopter in Iraq firing on a group of people who turned out to include a journalist from Reuters. Roll that clip there.
Break. Crazy Horse 1A, request permission to engage. Picking up the wounded.
Now, during this clip, first you see, this is a very long clip, and we can't roll this whole thing. You should find this on the internet somewhere and take a look at this. Because what you can see clearly with this long-range gun that they've got here, and you can hear the chatter of the guys, they fire on a journalist who is carrying a camera. At this point, they've already fired on this group of people, a devastating fire from a distance. This is their viewpoint, what they can see. They know what they're doing. And then their tactic is to wait until an ambulance comes and everybody gets loaded in the ambulance and then shoot that to pieces. Now, their response was, the prosecutors who went after Manning said, militants could learn about American military tactics by watching the video. What tactics? That you shoot people who are carrying cameras and then you back off and wait until an ambulance comes and then you attack again and kill the people in the ambulance? That's your tactic? That's why they're so angry, because they were exposed as cold-blooded murderers. We should not be doing that. That's not what America should be. We should not be fighting wars in that way, and that was the wrong war to be fighting in the first place. Now, what else did we learn from this Manning exposure that was done through WikiLeaks? Here's the nation. This is the long list. Besides the collateral video, collateral murder. Here's some of the other things we learned. We found out the Yemeni president lied to his own people. He claimed his military carried out airstrikes on militants that were actually done by the U.S. All of this was part of giving the U.S. full reign in the country against terrorists. And, of course, Yemen is one of the places that we have stepped up our bombings along with the Saudis. It's been a horrific situation. We burn these places to the ground. We make people angry because of what you just saw in that video. And then we bring them into the United States and hope that they aren't going to try to kill us. See, that's what they do. They kick the ant bed, and then the people who are furious about the attacks on weddings that Barack Obama has been doing, they come here, they are easily turned into terrorists. Some of the other things we found out from the Manning leaks. Details on Vatican hiding a big sex abuse case in Ireland. They found out that the U.S. was trying to get Spain to curb its probes of Gitmo torture and rendition. They found out that Egyptian torturers were being trained by the FBI, although they allegedly to teach them human rights issues. State Department memo showed that the U.S. backed a 2009 coup in Honduras, and they knew it was illegal and unconstitutional. We found State Department cables on Tunisia that appear to help spark revolt in that country. The country's ruling elite described it as the family, with mafia-like skimming throughout the economy. The U.S. knew all about massive corruption in Tunisia back in 2006, but they went on supporting the government anyway, making it the pillar of North African policy, and then going in and taking out Gaddafi in Libya, turning that into an arms bazaar for al-Qaeda. These are things that we learned from the Manning and WikiLeaks exposures. Here's some more. The U.S. pressured the European Union to accept genetic modification of food. Okay? We found out that Washington was misled by our own diplomats on the Russian-Georgia showdown. Oh, you mean they lied to us about what the Russians were doing? Oh, history repeats itself, doesn't it? Extremely important historical document, finally released in full, showing that Ambassador April Glaspie's cable from Iraq in 1990, the first Iraq war, on a meeting with Saddam Hussein before the Kuwait invasion. showing that wasn't necessary. The UK sidestepped a ban on housing cluster bombs. Officials concealed from Parliament how the U.S. is allowed to bring weapons to British soil in defiance of an arms treaty that would ban cluster bombs. This is another way that they're lying to us, okay? Just lie after lie after lie of the State Department, of Hillary Clinton's State Department, of Barack Obama's State Department, of George H.W. Bush's State Department, and on and on. This is why they put him in jail, okay? Because it embarrassed them. It showed their criminal actions. It showed what we just saw there with collateral murder. The New York Times summed up some of these this way. From hundreds of diplomatic cables, Afghanistan emerges as a looking-glass land where bribery, extortion, and embezzlement are the norm, and the honest man is a distinct outlier. And then subsequent to that, the cables that Manning and WikiLeaks exposed showed the Afghan vice president left the country with $52 million in cash. And I could go on and on and on. You want to see the full list? You'll find it at The Nation. And this is why I say, we need to look at publications on the left just as well as publications on the right. Because you will find things there that you're not going to find in the Wall Street Journal. And it's important to take a look at this. And I always think you ought to go with people who are not trying to hide their agenda. Clearly, we know who was trying to hide an agenda, and that was Hillary, the mainstream press, Barack Obama, and it isn't going to go away. I'm glad that they're letting Manning out. They should have never put him in jail. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. In the next segment, we're going to be talking to Gary Byrne. His book, Crisis of Character, looks at his time as a White House Secret Service officer, his firsthand experiences with Bill and Hillary, how they operate. But we're also going to talk to him about the preparations and the threats that are coming up with the inauguration just 2 days away. And we're going to then talk about some areas where Trump and the Democrats could actually work together. So we have to get past this thing of trying to constantly create division. And that, of course, is George Soros's plan to try to end the Democrats' plan as well, many of them. But there are some Democrats who want to work with Trump on certain issues. What are the issues that they can work together on? What are the things that they can accomplish together to reach out? And so I want to talk about that. Let's start moving towards a positive move where Trump, I think, will work with the Democrats. Before we do, real quickly, I just want to remind you that our sale that began at the beginning of the year, our 2017 Make Our Bodies Great Again initiative, is going to be ending very soon with the inauguration. And so now is the time to stock up on some of our most popular supplements that we have, things to help you fight the toxic garbage in the food, the water, the air, to give you a baseline of nutrition to start a healthier new year. We've got 30% off Brain Force, 30% off Super Male Vitality, 30% off Survival Shield X2. That's our nascent iodine. Also, we have 20% off Prostagard, Liver Shield, Knockout, our natural sleep aid, and Secret 12. That's our vitamin B12 liquid supplement. Very easy to take, very easy for your body to assimilate. So that'll be ending soon. Also today, we put in a special for InfoWars Select Storable Food, 30 to 40% off. People talk about, hey, you never know what's going to happen, so keep your powder dry. Well, keep your food dry. Keep your food sealed. And this food does stay sealed, dried, good to eat for 25 years. It's great packaging, but the food itself is a made in America, no GMO food in there. So it's great quality food, made in America. Again, shelf life of 25 years, and you can get it for 30 to 40% off. You can ease out those price spikes in food if they come. Make sure that you never get caught with a shortage of food, with a natural disaster, with a weather disaster, with something else. Make sure you've got that baseline of food, and now is the time to stock up on it when it's 30 to 40% off at InfoWarsStore.com. Let's talk real quickly about 5 areas where the Trump and the Democrats can make a deal. This is an article from The Hill. And first they start on trade, and they say, well, Trump has said, and we all believe at this point, even the media believes, that on day one he's going to get rid of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And that's good. You got people like Bernie Sanders who I think will be honest enough to work with him on that. But then they go on to point out he will need Congress's help to put in place new trade policies, because we're not going to be isolationist in spite of what we hear from the people who have pushed back on this. They say, you're going to turn us into an island. We're not going to have any. No, not at all. We're going to set up new trade deals new alliances, things that are going to work to our advantage. Many Democrats have complained about NAFTA. Yeah, John Lewis complained about NAFTA. But of course, you know, when Obama does it, he doesn't complain about that. He doesn't complain about the NSA when Obama does it. John Lewis, if he wouldn't stay over there and play the partisan game and call Trump illegitimate, he could work with Donald Trump on making NAFTA better, replacing it with something that is better. Also, on minimum wage, they say, well, maybe they could boost the minimum wage. This is something, of course, I hope doesn't happen. You don't really need to have a minimum wage increase. And here's evidence of it. We've seen these AstroTurf protesters being offered on Craigslist and other places in 20 different cities, $50 an hour. So they say, well, the federal minimum wage is $7.25. Here is the irony that the Democrats are illustrating here in the marketplace. If you have a scarcity of labor, in other words, you can't find enough people to go to Washington and do violent stuff or to protest Donald Trump, you have to up the wage. They're not offering these AstroTurf protesters $7.25 an hour. They're offering them $50 an hour. So you see, they're illustrating in their protests and their AstroTurf thing, they're illustrating free market principles. And they're also illustrating why we don't need to have a federal minimum wage. You don't really need to have a minimum wage, folks. You need a free market, and you need to get rid of people who are rigging that market. So let's hope that they don't get together on that, in spite of what the Hill says. They also say that Trump is attempting to erase concerns of the Democrats when he talks about building the infrastructure by pushing what Republicans favor as a public-private partnership strategy, in which Washington would provide financial incentives for foreign multinational corporations to buy our infrastructure. Let's hope that that doesn't happen. I don't want to see the infrastructure owned by foreign national companies like we have Spain and Australian companies owning our toll roads. The Australian company owns the toll roads in Washington. They jacked the prices up during the snow algorithmically up to like $50 for a 30-minute ride. I don't even want to see the federal government owning our infrastructure. Remember, Eisenhower built the interstate, but then we had Richard Nixon tell us that we're going to set our speed limits to 55. I don't want them owning the infrastructure.
On the march.
Do it locally. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In this segment, we're going to be talking to Gary Byrne. And of course, we've talked to him in the past about his book, Crisis of Character. You can find that at crisisofcharacterbook.com. There's a book about the service that he did protecting the Clintons. He was a veteran Secret Service officer during the Clinton White House, and he discloses his firsthand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. He's had federal law enforcement experience of nearly 30 years as a Secret Service agent in the U.S. Air Force Security Police, the Uniform Division of the Secret Service, and most recently as a federal air marshal. So now joining us is Gary Byrne. And I got to say, Gary, thank you so much for your book. I'm sure that it had an impact. You may be one of the people that actually hacked the election.
I
Exposing the crisis of her character. You know, that's the people who told us the truth about Bill and Hillary Clinton, whoever they are. Thank you. And I'll thank you because we know who you are. You put your name on here and told us what you saw firsthand.
Sure. Thank you very much for those kind words. I don't know how much influence I had. Certainly I had some, and I'm grateful for that opportunity, believe me.
Well, it's a great book, and if people want to get something to save for prosperity and to pull out as Exhibit A what we knew about Hillary and why we voted against her, your book, Crisis of Character, is a great thing for people to have now. And let's hope that we've heard the end of Bill and Hillary in terms of politics.
Crossed.
What's that?
I'm keeping my fingers crossed.
There you go. All right, now I want to talk to you about what's coming on with the threats that we've been hearing. Of course, there's been the Project Veritas undercover video. We talked to James O'Keefe yesterday. There's an article from WTOP.com. It's on the Drudge Report. Unprecedented threats drive Secret Service inauguration security. And this is Clancy, the Secret Service director, Joseph Clancy, and his partners. They say they're convinced attempts to launch other violent and dangerous acts are well within the realm of possibility. And here's the key thing, Gary, that he said. He said, I think people are willing to do things that they may not have been willing to do in the past. And boy, we're seeing that, aren't we? In the run-up to the election and in the stuff that's just happened the last day or so. I mean, this idiot who set himself on fire, and then failed to burn himself up. I mean, he couldn't even do that. But yeah, he sets himself on fire in front of the Trump Hotel. I mean, these people are seriously deranged. What will they do to other people if they'll set themselves on fire?
Yeah, that's mental illness right there. Absolutely. So actually, I know Mr. Clancy. Joe Clancy and I worked together for many years when he was a young agent and I was a young uniform division officer. And he's exactly right. And one of the reasons I think personally that one of the things that makes this unprecedented is that the way law enforcement is looked at today is a little bit different than it was years ago.
Yep.
It seems okay in certain parts of the government, and certain members of Congress seem okay when people are hostile towards law enforcement, and to the point where it's almost where some people think that it's okay to physically attack law enforcement, that it's not really that big of a deal. And that's not the way it was. That's not the way it should be. And it wasn't the way it was when I was in the Secret Service years ago.
And we have to thank for that. We have Barack Obama and the non-governmental organizations, these different groups that are funded by George Soros, the same people who were funding, offering $50 an hour to these protesters to go to Washington and create a problem. And of course, Gary, the issue that we've seen, and we saw this in the run-up to the election at the various Trump, 20,000 people would show up for Donald Trump, and you'd have a few protesters that come up, and then they would start doing things to people's cars. They would pick fights with people, and it was always, well, who started it? Was it passive-aggressive, or who threw the first punch? And it's important when we see these undercover investigations from Project Veritas, where they talk about the fact that, hey, this is the time to start punching people in the throat. So when you see this in advance, that this is what they were premeditating, then that really does help to push back against this narrative that these same people are selling with the help of the mainstream press that, it was the Trump people who started it.
Right. Yeah. And the thing of it is that there are going to be so many, just to give you an idea, if you think of Washington, D.C. in your mind, if you think of it, the area from the Capitol to the White House, basically from the Capitol to the Washington Monument and then to the White House down Pennsylvania Avenue, that'll all be secured off. And even in front of the Trump Hotel also, just coincidentally. Mm-hmm. And it'll be secured to the point of it'll be like getting into an airport. You have to go through a metal detector. So they'll have that area controlled. Then the areas outside that, 2 or 3 blocks, will also be controlled as far as large groups. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand about Washington, D.C., you have the freedom of speech and the freedom of protest, but Washington, D.C. requires you to have a permit. Mm-hmm. And so if you start to protest without a permit, you can immediately be arrested. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're 10 people standing there chanting that you don't like Donald Trump, that's fine. But if you're 10 people standing there and you start attacking Trump supporters, they're going to arrest you. And that's one of the flexibilities that law enforcement has.
Yeah, that's interesting. And one of the things that he points out when Clancy was talking in this article, he said we had situations, of course, where people have jumped over bike racks, they've jumped over security zones into our buffer. We saw the guy try to jump up on the stage with Donald Trump. That is something, again, that we haven't seen very much of in the past. I remember when I was in college, we had President Ford come to speak. And there was a guy that showed up. He thought it was funny. He showed up with a plastic pistol that was a squirt gun, and they wrestled him to the ground, and we never saw him again.
Yeah,
he disappeared long enough. He never came back to school.
Yeah, he probably got his wrist broken.
Yeah, exactly.
Listen, in case your listeners are confused about this, the Secret Service doesn't have a huge sense of humor.
That's right.
And when they're on duty, when they're off duty, it's a different story. One of the things I'd like to point out is that, when the president's motorcade moves from the Capitol after he's sworn in, and actually there's 2 good things about this, our ceremony of swearing in a president. The bad side of it is it happens in the same place every 4 years. The good side of that is that it happens in the same place every 4 years, and the Secret Service is very good at doing this with its partners, the FBI, and about 50 other agencies. There'll be about 28,000 security people involved, including the military to help with post-standing and explosive ordnance disposal, that kind of thing. Outside the secured area, there'll be areas set up for arrests, mass arrests. The interior police just have to get them to these checkpoints, and then those police officers will take them and process them in arrest.
You're talking about the fact that it's a good thing and a bad thing that it happens in the same place every year. I just saw a picture, some pictures in an article of a couple of military personnel. I think they were Army, posing as Donald Trump and as Mrs. Trump at various places, going down the steps, and giving that trial run. So even though it's in the same place each time, they're still practicing, working very hard, drilling with that in advance. They got people playing the role of Donald Trump and Mrs. Trump. They're very prepared. This is not the place, folks. All these people pushing back against this Project Veritas investigation, saying we were just joking. We were just playing with you. And it's like, you know what? It's going to be a new sheriff in town. I don't think they're going to take that kind of stuff lightly when you're conspiring to commit criminal acts. And then you say afterwards, you're just joking. And as we point out, you just point out, don't try to pull any jokes on the day of.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. And what people don't realize is that, you just can't go around, you have these people like, the movie producer,
Michael Moore.
Michael Moore going around and basically telling people to interrupt this inauguration. And at some point, if something does happen and these people say that he inspired them, yes. I mean, he's inciting a riot to a certain extent.
Exactly.
Listen, it's okay to say that you don't agree with President Trump getting elected. But listen, the reason he's elected is because both Democrats and Republicans stopped listening to a good portion of the country, and they have revolted, and they voted in Donald Trump, and let's get him in there and let's see what he can do. And I'm telling you, in my heart of hearts, I believe he's going to do very good for us, and I think we're in for a good 4 to 8 years.
Yeah, and as you pointed out, it's unprecedented to see law enforcement come out and endorse a presidential candidate the way that we've seen this before. We had the Border Patrol. First time ever, the Border Patrol Union endorsed a presidential candidate because they were tired of being told that they couldn't do their job. They took their job very seriously. They understood the danger of just opening the borders and letting anybody come through, letting terrorists come through, letting drug cartel members come through. They understood how bad that is, how dangerous it is for them personally, but also how dangerous it is for all of us who live here in America. And so they understood the border issue, I think, better than anybody else. They came out in support of Donald Trump. The police, who were unfairly characterized with these George Soros organizations and Black Lives Matter, who were unfairly targeted, assassinated because of these provocations by these groups, they've come out for it. But I agree with you. There's a lot of blame to go around on both the Democrat and Republican side. We need to give Donald Trump a chance. We need to say, hey, look, let's celebrate the peaceful transition of power in a democratic republic. But yet, when you have somebody say that, like the actress. What was her name? Married to Tom. Streep? Yeah, not Meryl Streep. No, the actress is married to Tom Cruise. Help me, guys. Somebody in the crew knows.
I'm sorry. Nicole Kidman.
Nicole Kidman. Thank you. When Nicole Kidman said that,
yes,
she was hammered just for saying, "Hey, this is a celebration of the peaceful transition of power and the democracy." Yeah. Why can't we celebrate that? But that's what these people don't want. And as we've seen these people arrested, we find out the very first rounds of these people who were protesting immediately after the election. As they booked them, somebody did a check on them, found that most of them weren't even registered to vote. So they didn't even participate in the election. They don't want to participate in a peaceful democratic transfer of power. They just want to create anarchy.
In my experience, what I've learned over the years is these people you're describing are being paid or motivated just to cause trouble. They're anarchists. Mm-hmm. I saw this firsthand right up front back in the early 90s in Seattle, Washington, at the World Trade Organization Summit. President Clinton was there. We were at this big arena, and the mayor at that time of Seattle wanted to give these, he thought they were regular protesters, freedom of speech type people, and they weren't. They were these anarchists. And he let them get the initiative, so to speak, to the point where these people were about to overrun the arena where the president was about to come to. And when he finally had to give the order for the police to drive him back, it was incredibly violent. And they had to take extraordinary police measures to drive these people back. That's not what you're going to see that now. The Secret Service and many people have learned from that incident, and they're going to engage these people from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. As soon as they, if they're not paying attention, I'm sure they're paying attention to what they're doing right now, intelligence-wise. And if they start to act up, they're going to, peaceably give them the opportunity to reel it in if they can, and then they're going to get arrested if they get out of hand.
Absolutely. Let me read you some of the things that were revealed in this second undercover investigation video that came out, and get your reaction as a former Secret Service agent, member of law enforcement. Some of the things that they said, well, you know, we were just joking now. Listen to this. Things that include shutting down major bridges, highway access points, as well as shutting down metro rails. So to do that, we're going to try to break in several teams, kind of like into checkpoints. Does that sound like a hoax to you?
No. That sounds like a cold, calculated, coordinated attack, or the prelude for an attack. And basically what they're doing is they're trying to use the same thing that we use against them, against us. But I will tell you that the Secret Service and its partners have been doing this a long time, and they have great capabilities. But you're right. Back to your original point, there's no such thing as we were just kidding. That's what people say when they get caught. Oh, you know, you saw a similar attitude from the Clinton campaign when their emails got leaked out. Oh, we just talk like that. We didn't really mean to insult Hispanics. Yeah, you did. Yeah, exactly. And then from the first video, they were talking about putting butyric acid in the ventilation system so they could evacuate the National Press Club building. And they even talked about creating a stampede. Now, butyric acid is a disgusting smelling thing. It's the ingredient in human vomit that gives it its distinctive smell. So they wanted to do that in a concentrated form. But of course, it's also an acid. And when you put an acid in a concentrated form, you can burn skin. If you get it in a concentrated form, you can also burn your lungs. So they really are playing with fire. They're even talking about, well, let's put this here and we can blow it up to make it explode and then create a stampede. I mean, your comments on that as a law enforcement officer. Yeah. So you're just talking about straight out terrorism. That's what that is. And I will tell you, the Secret Service, and I know this firsthand because as you were describing that scenario, I remember 22 years ago, roughly, a similar threat at a venue one time, a large arena in the United States, when I was protecting President Bill Clinton, his first term. So the Secret Service has seen this many times, and right now, all the venues where the Trump family may be going, or any protectee of the Secret Services, they're being secured now, and they're going to be swept, and they're going to take the. I mean, don't get me wrong; it's cumbersome and it's expensive, but they will take the steps to secure these. And if they catch these people doing it, they will be arrested and more than likely charged with terrorism. I mean, that's what you're talking about. It's domestic terrorism, whatever you want to call it.
And when we talk about something like this butyric acid and saying, oh, we're going to make it so obnoxious that people are going to have to leave the building, but then they start talking about stampede. So then you're talking about secondary or tertiary effects. And it occurs to me, Gary, that when they start doing these things, even if they viewed them as pranks, they're going to be pulling law enforcement officers into that area to address this particular incident. And then that means that you're going to have some areas that aren't going to have coverage or aren't going to have the coverage that they would have normally had. It's going to be weaker. That would possibly expose situations to something of an attack by somebody who was seriously a terrorist, who was trying to murder people, create acts of terrorism. So even if they're doing this just as a joke, as a prank, they're going to be using resources that are now weakening the defense against people who are bent on killing people.
No, you're exactly right. And again, that goes back to their intent. Their intent, you know, they might say their intent is harmless. It obviously is not. And the other thing, too, in that scenario you described, if they cause that kind of panic, we'll just use the number of 500 people. If 500 people are trying to get out of a room because of something they've done, they've panicked them, and somebody ends up getting stampeded and crushed, which is not uncommon.
Oh, that happens at concerts and stuff like that all the time. Exactly.
That's exactly right.
That's why you don't yell fire in a crowded building. That's the perfect example. Hey, you got free speech, but you're going to yell fire in a crowded building, or you're going to put vomit in the place to run people out, and you create panic. Now, their blood or whatever happens to them is on your hands.
No, absolutely. And I still say at some point, it even goes back to these people that are these famous Hollywood people like Michael Moore, go and do this, go and do this. I still say they have some responsibility too if something like this happens.
And when you're talking about secondary responsibility or the responsibility of people who foment this stuff, it's interesting. There was an article today that came out talking about how the Hungarian president and administration are saying, we're going to take a really close look at these organizations that are run and funded by George Soros. We may be holding them responsible for the revolutions and the big-time violence that has happened in former Soviet Union countries that they're trying to do in Hungary and other places. I think that might be something that a President Trump might start looking at. That's a difficult thing to do, because then you start getting into a fine line between free speech and these organizations, but we know what they're up to. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Gary Byrne. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and we're talking to Gary Byrne. He was a Secret Service agent, officer protecting the Clinton White House. He has 30 years law enforcement service, and so we were talking to him about the threats that are being put out there by Disrupt J20 and other organizations. People like Bill Ayers, you know, the usual suspects out there trying to overthrow the democratic elections, the democratic transfer of power, what we celebrate here in America, the peaceful transition of power. They don't want to see that. A lot of these people don't bother to even participate in the election. They just want to try to burn things down. Before we get back to Gary, I just want to remind you that we are going to be ending the sale that we've had since the beginning of the year on our Make Our Bodies Great Again initiative, an effort to help you to get your body in better shape for the new year. And of course, part of that is protecting yourself from the bad things that are in your food, your water, your air, but it's also giving you a baseline of nutritional support. So we've got a lot of products that we put on sale, anywhere from 20 to 30% off, things like Brain Force, 30% off, Super Male Vitality, 30% off, Survival Shield X2, our nascent iodine, 30% off. Take a look at what we have there. Look at the reviews. These products have independent reviews on our site. You can see how people use them, see what their personal testimonies are about that. Do your own research. Take control of your life. And one of the things that you can do also with that is to make sure that you have a source of food that is going to be readily available. Just as we saw just this last week, snowstorms, ice storms, shut down the availability of food. People rushed out at the last minute to try to get food. Well, you don't need to do that if you've got that stored. Even a situation like that, you don't have to get out in the snow and ice and try to grab food, then wind up to, when you get there, to see that the store shelves look like you've gone to Venezuela, where there's absolutely nothing to sell. Okay? You can get this in advance and get it now at 30 to 40% off. Massive discount. This is a time to stock up. This is time to make sure that not only do you have food, but that you are protecting yourself from spikes in the price of food, not only from shortages in food. So I want to get back to Gary now. And, you know, Gary, you have you broke down with your book, Crisis of Character. You told us about the threat of the Clintons. You helped us to dodge that threat. You've been breaking down the threat that's coming up this next week. Comment a little bit about the fact that we've got, we touched on a little bit, the same groups that are anarchists that are putting this out there, but also, you know, it's not just people like Michael Moore, but of course we've got people like Bill Ayers, who was bombing federal buildings and basically got away with it. He didn't go to prison, but, you know, here he is now. He's still associating himself with these groups, Disrupt J20, who are calling for violence, for disruption of this peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing about Bill Ayers, and I know you know this, but he's one of President Obama's friends, an acquaintance from Illinois. And this guy, unfortunately, is kind of a subject matter expert on this kind of anarchy. And you're right, he did get away with it. He should be doing time for the murder of a police officer. But he got away with it. And the fact that he's still doing it again, or, you know, quite possibly is helping these people, or at least encouraging them, possibly. It's wrong, and it makes you wonder, you know, why he got a pass in the first place. Yeah, and of course, the things that he's done that are probably even more dangerous than the one murder and the other things that he did is basically getting an education. He's had a massive impact in that, and really kind of laid the groundwork for this Black Lives Matter stuff. It was his organization that started putting out white skin privilege back in the 1970s as part of the Weathermen. Can you stay a little bit with us into the next segment? All right. We're going to be right back with Gary Byrne. Again, his book is Crisis of Character. He warned us about the Clintons. It's a great book to have because they're not going to go away, and certainly history is not going to go away, and people need to understand we had real reasons not to vote for Hillary Clinton. He was one of the guys that hacked the election, we could say. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Gary Byrne. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I'm with Gary Byrne. His book, Crisis of Character, what he saw
as a Secret Service officer during the Clinton years. Very important book to read to understand where these people are coming from. And we've been talking about the preparations for the inauguration, as well as the well-publicized threats from Disrupt J20, from people who are paying AstroTurf protesters $50 an hour to go to Washington and create problems, and also the Project Veritas undercover investigation we talked to about yesterday, to James O'Keefe, and the fact that these people are premeditating in advance to do this, because we always have the issue, was this something that was impulsive or was this pre-planned? Well, we can see from this undercover investigation that they have pre-planned things that are not only violent, but are crimes. And so there's going to be some real criminal exposure to these people. And Gary, we're going to have a different attorney general who's going to take this thing in a very different light than we've had from Eric Holder, who just looked the other way when we had people at the polling places from the new Black Panthers intimidating voters with sticks. He said, no problem, we're not going to pay attention to that. I kind of don't think that Jeff Sessions is going to have that kind of reaction to people if they start doing violent things and they get arrested for plotting crimes around this inauguration. Do you?
No, I agree with you 100%. He's going to enforce the law the way it was written, and not interpret it in these, these insane, or really ignore it, is what we saw sometimes. Because one of the incidents you talked about, the Black Panthers at the voting booths, that actually happened right here in Philadelphia. And I saw the video on the local news station, these guys standing out there with their black berets on, intimidating people not to come in and vote. And the people they were intimidating looked like white Europeans, white Americans. And so it definitely drew you to that conclusion. That won't be ignored anymore. Either will the attacks on police officers will be called, due justice or getting even type of things, because it's not.
Let me ask you, as somebody with 30 years of experience as a federal law enforcement, what about the people, the bikers for Trump? They said they're going to form a wall of meat to protect the inauguration from protesters. I mean, they can certainly perform a very important function as a deterrent. I mean, if you got a wall of meat there, maybe you won't try to sucker punch them. Maybe you won't try to go attack the other people who are there who might not be able to protect themselves as well. 5,000 bikers from Bikers for Trump. Chris Cox, the founder of that organization, said they're going to be in attendance at the inauguration. But speaking to them as a former law enforcement officer, what would you say to them that they need to be careful of so they don't run into any issues with the police or the security there?
Yeah, so generally what would happen with that group, based on my experiences, is they won't actually be allowed inside the secure area. They'll be there just like any other participant. But I do like their attitude. I get where they're coming from. These guys are middle America. These are my neighbors. These are the guys that they work at the airport where I used to work. Those type of people, and I get where they're coming from, and I agree with them. But they need to just come as participants, listen to the directions of law enforcement like everybody else, and enjoy themselves. And like any American, if they're attacked by anarchists, let the police know and then protect yourself.
Yeah. I think that'd be the key. Make sure that you've got, and if they have a lot of people there, if they are protecting themselves, protecting other people, make sure they've got some other people who are calling the police over so that, they don't just go into a situation where it's a total melee. I mean, that's a situation that could work out poorly for both sides.
Sure, absolutely. I don't see this as being an issue. I see it as some really cool support for President Trump. I think it's neat.
Well, let's hope so. Thank you so much, Gary Byrne. Your book is Crisis of Character. People can find that at crisisofcharacterbook.com. And coming up in the next segment, Leanne McInnes, and she'll be hosting the 4th hour of the Alex Jones Show. We'll be right back.
And welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. It's that same cozy relationship that Alex Jones has with President-elect Donald Trump that has got Alex Jones headed to Washington, D.C. to be right there for the inauguration of President Donald Trump. What exciting times.
Congressman Lewis.
I am Leanne McInnes taking over the reins here. And we've got a jam-packed show for you. I want to say thank you to David Knight and the rest of the crew. We are definitely on a skeleton crew here because most of our people are on the ground or about to be touching down on the ground in D.C., bringing you all of the action. You can check that out on the Alex Jones YouTube channel. They're going to be live streaming a lot of the time, also filing a number of reports there from D.C., but we definitely are going to be bringing you all of the news as it's breaking there for the inauguration. So one of the things that Donald Trump says that he is going to continue doing once he becomes the president is tweeting. He also said he's not going to be taking over the POTUS Twitter handle. He likes his own real Donald Trump Twitter, and he loves the fact that he can reach so many people on his own social media. And also, he says he's going to keep on tweeting because it's his only defense against a lying media. Now, you'll recall there was a lot of backlash, a lot of frenzy when Donald Trump was talking about plans to move the press from the West Wing. It's a very small briefing room, so they wanted to kind of move it over to another area. It's about 200 feet away, and they were just in an uproar. The press went crazy. So he says, you know what, we're not going to move it. But guess what? Some people in the press aren't going to be able to get in. There's only 49 seats there so far. So now Donald Trump plans to select the media representatives who are going to be given access to the presidential press briefing room. And he said, look, we tried to move it to another area. We're going to have a lot of people that want to come in and cover, what the president is doing. But they went crazy. So now he's saying, fine, but we're going to select the people who are going to be allowed in. So, of course, I bet that's going to be a new uproar, that he's already turning into a dictator and shutting down the free press. So those 49 seats are currently assigned by the White House Correspondents Association. So it'll be very interesting to see who in the press is going to be given access to the presidential press briefing room. Because Donald Trump has already said he is considering allowing the alternative media as well as alternative bloggers to get in there. Because, frankly, we are the future of news. Radio talk show hosts as well, they're going to be allowed to have a seat there. We are the future of news, and it definitely has the establishment media in a panic. But speaking of seats, Donald Trump, he doesn't mince words here. So we have all those Democrats. I believe we're up to 40 now, or maybe at least 54 House Democrats pledged they will not be attending the inauguration. But here's what Donald Trump had to say to those Democrats that, don't want to give up their seat.
He didn't remember that he skipped that inauguration.
He conveniently doesn't remember. How do you forget if you go to an inauguration? I can tell you when I was at the inaugurations, and you don't forget something like that. So he got caught, and it's pretty bad. And it's making him look bad, frankly. It's a very important time. This is a transition, and a very important transition, and especially because things will be done beautifully, but they'll be done differently than they have been over the past 8 years. And I can say over the past 16 years. I mean, they'll be different. And, we have to have a smooth transition. And President Obama understands that very well, and that's why he's been so gracious, but he understands that. And I think for him to have grandstanded, because I think he just grandstanded John Lewis, and then he got caught in a very bad lie. So let's see what happens. As far as other people not going, that's okay, because we need seats so badly. I hope they give me their tickets. Are they going to give us their tickets, or are they going to give them to other people? No, what happens to their tickets? I hope they're going to give us their tickets.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people that would give a left hand to get their tickets to this inauguration. And, he's pretty gracious there, saying that President Obama is really trying to help this be a peaceful transition. I think on the surface, that is an accurate statement, or at least that's how, what the appearance is being given. But a lot of people are saying that President Obama and his administration are dropping a bunch of landmines to leave for President-elect Trump once he gets in, him and his administration. So we'll talk a little bit more about those landmines later, and just these executive orders and everything that President Trump plans to overturn almost immediately. I think he's planning on 5 for Friday. I mean, once he's sworn in. So this guy's ready to get straight to work. He doesn't want to go get wined and dined at the luncheon and go to the parade and all the things. He's ready to get to work right away. It's going to be stark contrast for our elected representatives, who really kind of didn't show up for work, but a third of the time that they were even there. So speaking of this inauguration, now we've been reporting all week about the fact that radical leftists are planning to target the DC Metro rail line. They want to block inauguration access altogether. They've been conducting these training workshops, just talking about all sorts of domestic terror type activities that they can do to disrupt this inauguration. Well, now we also have some leaked audio of the Disrupt J20 plans. Now, this is improved audio from these leftist groups. It's juxtaposed with the B-roll of a few of the out-of-control rioters. So these are riots that we've seen just in response to President Trump President-elect Donald Trump. So once he got elected, these are riots that have taken place in response to that. So we just want you to understand that this Disrupt J20 and these activist groups, they might, now that they've been called out and they're being exposed for planning these domestic terror activities, they're saying, you know, it's just a joke. We're not planning on getting violent. You know, we're just going to be peacefully protesting. Well, take a look at the B-roll of what's actually already happened and just be safe out there, because this could really be taking place on the 20th. So you can watch this video while it's happening at infowars.com/show to see that B-roll. But let's go ahead and roll it.
On the 18th, our first big action is planned. This is going to be a period party at McInnes' house. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be the last 2 days living in Chevy Chase before he moves into the vice presidential residence, and we're going to send him off with a bang. On the 19th is the deplorable. Right, that's exactly what it sounds like. All the alt-right, neo-Nazis, etc. This is their party to celebrate Trump. We're going to crash it. A portion, the folks with the DC Anti-Fascist Coalition will talk more in detail about that and how you can plug in. The 20th is the big day. There's stuff happening all day. There's stuff organizing that's happening. Answers doing their thing along the parade route. They're going to be along the parade route all day. They've got a permit and it sounds
So we're watching visuals of them burning effigies of Donald Trump. They're taking to the streets. I recall a lot of this happening over on the West Coast. They're in Portland and California. They're holding the LGBT flag, saying Donald Trump is going to take back all the progress made in that community, which of course is a lie. We've debunked that again and again. But here they are blocking checkpoints, lighting fires in the middle of the road. We've seen them destroy their own cities, so really intense. And this is interesting because, you know, cities like Portland or Los Angeles, other spaces where we've already seen the rioting happening in the streets, they don't depend on a main metro line. That's not the metro rail isn't the artery of the city. Whereas in D.C., that's how everybody gets around, and especially when there's 2 million people. Look, there's a building set on fire. Again, here with the blowtorches, with the burning effigies. And so here, you hear this girl with her sweet little voice, and she's so excited. How wonderful all this anarchy is going to be. We'll go ahead and pull out of this video now. For me, just watching just the craziness of these people beating down their own city, busting things up, busting out windows, setting things on fire. There was other video that we played about a month or so ago where they actually start turning against each other and beating each other up because a girl was trying to stop them from taking down a whole electrical grid. And, you know, that was a little step too far for her. But then so they started attacking her, saying, get out of our way. We want to tear our city up because of President-elect Donald Trump. So absolute madness. And so this is this Disrupt J20. And there are plenty of other activist groups that are also planning to disrupt the inauguration. Mike Cernovich, who is actually one of the founders of the Deplorable, says he's going to be taking action against these people. They've got it on tape. They're talking about committing a felony. Talking about deploying a butyric acid, okay, at the Deplorable, which is, yeah, sure, it's just a stink bomb. It's just going to put the smell of vomit into the air, but it's going to clear out that building which means you could have people burning their throat or lungs with that acid, or causing a stampede. And what happens if someone gets crushed and trampled on and you cause someone's death due to the stampede? Guess what? You committed a felony, and, you know, it'll be interesting to see what type of charges they levy against people, domestic terrorism charges during the inauguration. We'll stick around. We're going to have a lot more coming right up after this. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I am Leanne McAdoo, your host for this hour. And we're seeing a lot about the establishment media, the establishment there in D.C. being in a total panic. They're talking about the fact that their city, they feel like it's being invaded because Donald Trump and his administration and his supporters have all come to drain the swamp. Well, they're all going to be sort of trapped indoors, especially during this inauguration with all of the Donald Trump supporters there. So these are people that really should be taking advantage of our inauguration preparedness special. So Alex Jones has put this together. It's going to be 30 to 40% off all of InfoWars Select storable food at InfoWarsStore.com. That's 30 to 40% off the retail price of all of our InfoWars Select storable food. So you can be prepared for whatever happens on Inauguration Day. If you're stuck there in D.C., or we know there's going to be lots of riots and protests and things like that planned for across the country. So who knows where this thing could go. So these, you know, survival experts agree that storable food is essential for every family to have on hand as a form of life insurance. And in these times, that life insurance is really important. So all of our InfoWars Select foods, they've got a shelf life of 25 years. They're all made in the USA. And right now, during this inauguration preparedness special, you can get all of that for 30 to 40% off all of our select storable food at InfoWarsStore.com. It's a limited time while supplies last during our inauguration special. So get yours today. Secure yours today. And on that note of the establishment media sort of freaking out, and you're seeing the Democrats freaking out, losing their grasp on the minority community, for instance. Well, we've got a lot of people kind of speaking out against, you know, any black person that would dare to come out in support of Donald Trump. You're seeing a lot of racism within the black community against other black people. And I feel that this is a way to paralyze them from speaking out or from going to the other side, so to speak, a way of control to keep them on that thought plantation. So we've got a video of Snoop Dogg where he's coming out saying, I dare a black person to play for Donald Trump. I dare you, because I'm going to call you out. And of course, he uses all the racist terms that are used within that group. But on Monday, CNN's Mark Lamont Hill totally went off the rails because he labeled any black Trump-supporting celebrities, such as Steve Harvey, a mediocre Negro. Apologize for saying that. I'm just reporting it. That's the facts. That's what he said. So comedian Steve Harvey was actually there. He visited Donald Trump, and he came out from that meeting saying, you know what, I think he's a pretty all right guy. I think we should give him a chance. I think he's got some good plans for our country. So Mark Lamont Hill was not having it. Now, granted, Hill's name is on some of these flyers for a lot of these agitprop protests that are going to be planned. So we already know where he stands on this. But Steve Harvey actually had a response for Mark Lamont Hill and other racist people within that group that are telling people how to think.
Comedian Steve Harvey is speaking out about the backlash over his meeting with President-elect Trump.
A lot of y'all hurt me. I didn't expect the backlash to be so vicious. But I also understand that if I'm going to keep getting stabbed at, then at least while you stabbing me, you should understand my intent for even taking the meeting in the first place. I'm from the hood. I've been trying to do my part for years for boys and girls.
Harvey called into his own syndicated radio show after social media exploded with criticism over his get-together at Trump Tower. He was also mocked on Saturday Night Live.
It's me, Steve Harvey. Yeah, I do government now. Does this bode well for our country? Survey say.
Harvey's wife, Marjorie, is coming to his defense, writing on Instagram, doing the right thing sometimes isn't popular, but it's okay. You always make me proud.
And so there you have it. That's what you see. Anyone, I know Kanye West faced some backlash as well when he took a meeting with President-elect Donald Trump. He visited him at Trump Tower. So you can't step off the thought plantation. You're not allowed to announce yourself as a Republican or even to say, you know, want to take a meeting with the future most powerful person on the planet. And they were given a lot of backlash for Steve Harvey potentially planning on working with Dr. Ben Carson. And I'm sorry, but Dr. Ben Carson is not mediocre. But that's what they would like to say, is that he's mediocre as well. Guess what? What are you telling any of your black supporters, your black community, for the being a Democrat? You do realize they're the party of the KKK, right? They founded the KKK, but I guess there's nothing wrong with that. So don't step out with facts. But frankly, it's nice to see we have people speaking out, not being afraid to step off the thought plantation. Stick around. We will be right back. That's right. To everything, there is a season, and it is our season to write our reality, our version of reality, not this new world order that's been planned for us. And that is why it is so epic that we are seeing the establishment, these globalists speaking out in utter fright at the fact that their new world order, their precious new world order plans that they've been working on for so long are completely getting dismantled. They are all freaking out. And that's the perfect song to come into this segment too. Now, earlier during the show, I know we played some video with Joe Biden talking about the collapse of the democratic world order. It's at risk, and it's the Russians, of course. But you know what? It's just so good. I definitely want to play it again. So this was VP Joe Biden delivering his final speech Wednesday to the elites at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. These are the people you'll recall who last year at the Davos Economic Forum, I believe it was Ariana Huffington and some others, were really pushing meditation and visualization. And they were having these entire classes. It was like a sold out talk. Well, I guess they don't have to pay for it, but it was just like the room was packed, and it was all of these elites there sitting in their meditative poses, learning how to visualize their businesses and visualize the future they wanted to see. And this is so key because we as humans, we truly are these free will creatures. We have the power to visualize our future, to visualize our destiny. That is why we have television programming that's put in there by the controllers to program us into the version of reality that they want for all of us. But getting back to this Huffington, Ariana Huffington, so do you think that while they were sitting there visualizing their epic takeover for the future, that they had visualized what actually took place in 2016 and beyond? They are freaking out. So you guys might want to work on your fine tuning there. But I mean, to me, that is just so profound that we the people around the globe were able to break the conditioning that they had set out, regardless of if they control Hollywood, the entertainment, the music, all of it, television, the news that we see, everything that we consume, all the programming that's been forced down our throat for decades. We were able to break through that conditioning, and that is so powerful, and that is why they were freaking out, and once again making Russia the boogeyman, which frankly I think they give Vladimir Putin too much power. So let's get back to this epic final speech that creepy Joe Biden delivered. The gist of it is simple. A time of uncertainty, we must double down on the values that made Western democracies great and not allow the liberal world order to be torn apart by destructive forces. So this is the same liberal world order that they're allowing to be torn apart by this refugee crisis that they've let loose on Europe thanks to the endless wars that this so-called democratic New World Order has been a part of. Let's take a listen.
But the greatest threat on this front springs from the distinct illiberal and external actors who equate their success with fracturing the liberal international order. We see it in Asia and the Middle East, where China and Iran would clearly prefer a world in which they have overwhelming sway in their regions. And I'll not mince words. This movement is principally led by Russia. Under President Putin, Russia is working with every tool available to them to, one, whittle away at the edges of the European project, test the fault lines among Western nations, and return to a politics defined by spheres of influence. We see it in their aggression against their neighbors, sending in so-called little green men across borders to stir violence and stirs of strains of separatism in Ukraine. Using energy as a weapon, cutting off gas supplies midwinter, raising prices to manipulate nations to act in Russia's interest, using corruption to empower oligarchs to coerce politicians. We see it in their worldwide use of propaganda and false information campaigns, injecting doubt and political agitation in democratic systems, strengthening illiberal factions and forces on both left and right to seek out and roll back the decades of progress from within our systems. We even saw it in the cyber intrusions against political parties and individuals in the United States of America, which our intelligence community, all 17, have determined with high confidence. I've been doing this for 46 years. They seldom use the phrase high confidence.
Well, except for when they want to take us to a war in Iraq and other places, and they torture that information out of terrorists. False information.
Targeted. Europe has seen the same kind of attacks in the past. With many countries in Europe slated to hold elections this year, we should expect further attempts by Russia to meddle in the democratic process. It will occur again, I promise you.
All right, let's go ahead and come out of here, because basically Joe Biden just wants everybody to know that Putin has a different vision of the future, and he's warning all of these other governments there, all these other leaders at Davos that, you know, Russia's your boogeyman too and coming after you, so we really need to do something. But when you're listening to Joe Biden and all of these words are just rolling off his tongue so easily, it's because that is exactly what the U.S. government and President Obama's administration has been doing around the globe. They've been destabilizing other nations and interfering in their elections and stirring up chaos in order to further their agenda. So they're guilty of doing it, which is why it rolls off his tongue so cleverly like that. But the fact is, it's not that they're dismantling this order, this new world order. They're creating a new one. We, the people, are creating a new world order. So like I said earlier, you know, we were able to break through the conditioning on this. And this is why we see DC in a full-scale panic. And this is on the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration. Soon he will be the president. So they're freaking out about the fact that he has promised, he's campaigned on draining the swamp. So from the New York Times, they're kind of taking some information from different people that are living there in D.C. So this is coming from Leslie Harris. She's a liberal Democratic lawyer. She uses war imagery. I feel like my city is about to be invaded. Another person says, Mr. Trump has upended the city's rhythms and jangled its nerves. The White House press corps is fighting to keep its workspace in the West Wing. High-powered lobbyists worry their clients will turn up in his Twitter feed. Civil servants, many of them working class, say he knows nothing about running a bureaucracy. Oh, it's so devastating. Did Obama know anything about running a bureaucracy? I'm pretty sure he was a community organizer. Organizing what community? I have no idea. There really wasn't any proof that he was fit to serve as president of the United States. But, you know, a lot of people seem to think that he did an amazing job and they miss him already. So Robert Dallek, who's a presidential biographer, lived in D.C. for 20 years, says, we don't know exactly what to expect from Trump, except that he's combative. Yeah, damn right. And that's exactly why the people elected him, to get him in there to be combative against all of you D.C. leeches who've been living the high life off the U.S. taxpayers' dollars and enriching yourselves and your families and all your crony capitalist buddies. So these are people who have gone out of their way to delegitimize Trump. So of course he's going to be combative against you and put you on a blacklist and ensure that you are not given a job within his administration and make sure that you have to knock on a few extra doors to find yourself in a new position with this new administration. So these people just are not used to having their feathers ruffled, but that's what's happening right now. And it's a very exciting times, very exciting. So speaking of President Obama, might not be so exciting for him and his outgoing administration and all those people that have worked so hard for the last 8 years to push their progressive policies, because they're going to get overturned pretty quickly. But according to the Washington Times Legislative Index, which captures the legislative scores, the legislative record, they say Obama has scored the worst legislative record in history. They say he struggled to find ways to work with a Congress that ranged from lukewarm to openly hostile toward him. And he signed fewer bills into law than even one-term presidents like Carter and George H.W. Bush. In the course of his 8 years, he has signed just 1,227 bills into law. Congress also spent less time in session. They handled fewer business on the chamber floors and generally sputtered about for much of Mr. Obama's tenure. So nothing got done, basically, and that's not all President Obama's fault. That's, of course, our elected representatives' fault, which I hope a lot of people voted them out and cleared some of those seats, cleared the way for some people who actually want to make a difference for the American people. But again, Congress wasn't even in session. Most of these people were on vacation. They'd talk about pretty important bills that needed to be passed. And then they said, well, we'll get right to that after our break, after our recess. And then they'd be gone for 2 months. And then President Obama would be going golfing every single time something important happened in our country or around the globe. So they also go on to say that the president was never good at reaching across the aisle. So when the composition of Congress changed relative to what it was in his first 2 years, he just wasn't able to accommodate that very well. He couldn't grow accustomed to operating in a system where he was not the sole player. So this is Mr. Community Organizer. President Obama just couldn't figure out how to organize the community there in D.C. So what does he do? Just signs a bunch of executive orders and sets a record for regulations. And in fact, he set a new record for regulations, 81,640 pages in 2016. This is according to a report by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. So the presidency produced 81,640 total pages of regulations and rules for 2016. This is surpassing the previous record the administration set in 2010 by 235 pages. Obama is the only president to ever surpass the 80,000 mark of regulatory pages produced. He achieved this feat 4 times. So they added 572 pages on one day alone, Thursday, November 17th. So he only signed 1,227 bills into law in an entire 8 years, but he managed to sign 80-something plus pages of regulations in just 1 year. So here is a president who is stymieing growth and business at every single turn while going out there and telling people that he's creating jobs and all these communities are so much better off that he's been the president, when his policies and what he's actively doing is working against any motion within the government. So now, of course, people are calling on President-elect Donald Trump to follow through, make good on those campaign promises, to cut regulations. They say, we don't need a pen and a phone. We need a meat axe. The Trump administration's efforts to combat this regulatory state that they're going to be getting into is going to include a temporary moratorium on all new regulations, canceling overarching executive orders, and a thorough review to identify and eliminate unnecessary regulations that kill jobs and bloat government. So to put perspective on the type of effect that all these regulations have on the American economy, a 2014 report by the National Association of Manufacturers found that regulatory costs on all firms exceed $2 trillion annually. And this disproportionately affects small businesses. So if you're creating all of these regulations, guess who it is that's going to have to jump through all the hoops? It's not the government, it's we the people. So he doesn't sign any good bills into law, but you're damn sure that he's going to make good on his promise of you didn't build that, because you're not going to be able to build anything because you're going to have to jump through so many regulatory hoops. And we are hopefully going to see Donald Trump taking that meat axe to all of these regulations and get a little bit more movement within our economy. In fact, Trump is saying that he may take 4 or 5 executive actions on Friday. This is going to be the day that he is sworn into office. So like I said, he's getting right to work. This is according to his spokesman, Sean Spicer. So Trump has promised to take executive actions immediately after taking office to counter some of the policies of President Barack Obama. So you see a lot of the people who are part of this outgoing administration, they're all super sad and they're packing their bags and they're all crying and they're taking pictures with President Obama because they know everything they worked so hard on to basically tear down this country and stop our forward motion is going to be overdone like that. So I'm pretty excited about it. So just here quickly, we'll move on to some interesting a story that I found interesting. The CIA actually published 12 million declassified documents online, and these documents include everything from CIA mind control efforts to government overthrows. This is very exciting. Mikhail Thalen has this article up at Infowars.com. And these documents, they date from the 1940s to the 1990s, but they talk about the overthrow of foreign governments and mind control efforts by the CIA. So this is stuff we're always reporting on here. Just there when we're listening to Joe Biden at Davos saying how Putin is involved in overthrowing foreign governments. Why don't you just go read this actual dossier of these real intelligence documents, these legit intelligence documents that have been declassified, to see just what this government has been up to with overthrowing foreign governments, the CIA's mind control efforts. These files reveal the CIA carried out secret psychic experiments on Uri Geller, which I might be a little too young to know exactly who that is, but he's an Israeli famed for his apparent ability to bend spoons with his mind. So he was taken to Stanford Research Institute in the 70s to have his psychic abilities investigated. So the CIA is basically carrying out, and this is just one person, they've carried out other mind control experiments as well, but they got Uri Geller to, got him to predict an agent's drawings from the next room. And so there's this article is coming out of the Sun, UK, and so they have all these pictures of all the drawings that Uri Geller was doing. The agent in the next room was kind of feeding him these this information, and he was able to read the man's mind through the room. So this released cache of documents reveals UFO sightings and psychic experiments from the Stargate program. So this is a program long of interest to conspiracy theorists. But this project was the code name for a secret U.S. Army unit established in 1978 at Fort Meade, Maryland by the Defense Intelligence Agency. So there they go, investigating psychic phenomena. They're revealing UFO sightings. Very interesting stuff there. Mikhail links to that in his article. It's up at Infowars.com. But this is kind of exciting stuff, man. We've all been waiting for the truth to get out, pushing for disclosure. And here you go. Maybe we got it on the eve of Donald Trump's inauguration. Well, stick around. Margaret Howell is going to be joining me in studio to let us know what's coming up for the InfoWars Nightly News tonight. And welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. We are wrapping up the 4th hour here. I've got Margaret Howell joining me in studio. Let us know, what do you got coming up for the Nightly News tonight, 7 p.m. Central?
Okay, well, we've got a jam-packed hour. First of all, Roger Stone, the interview. In case you missed it, we're going to be discussing his recent bout with a poisonous assassination attempt. Apparently, Leanne, the CDC, they sent out this testing. I don't know, I'm sure you watched it yesterday and even talked to Roger, probably yourself, but he is saying that he was poisoned with polonium, not enough to kill him. And we know that he's a lover of liberty and a defender of everything we hold dear. And you know what? These criminals think that they can get away with this. We're going to be highlighting that. We're also going to be highlighting Joe Biden, talking about how the globalist agenda is going down, thanks in part to you, InfoWarriors, and people out there that are, you know what? They're reiterating, they're retweeting our videos. And they understand that there's a war on for your mind and that the truth is at stake. And it looks like Joe Biden, the sniffler, the crybaby, is finally feeling the burn, which I love, by the way. He's got something to cry about that's actually authentic for once instead of,
Oh, Biden's crocodile tears.
Exactly.
Well, I know that's very exciting because Alex is always saying, make your own videos, shoot your own stuff. And I feel like people really have started to follow through on that. And so many independent journalists out there, so many people uploading it to Twitter. I mean, it was an independent journalist out there, someone who just so happened to capture that video and upload it to Twitter of Hillary Clinton collapsing at the 9/11 memorial.
That's right.
So that, Maxine Waters says anyone who's, said Hillary Clinton was sick needs to be impeached, according to Donald Trump.
First of all, Maxine Waters, trying to wrap your head around Maxine Waters' logic for a moment, and I really tried to give her the benefit of the doubt. If you go down her dark, twisted rabbit hole of thinking, she actually thinks that the Russians came up with crooked Hillary. No, anybody with half a brain understands that
Hillary's history
is in fact crooked and corrupt as the day is long. The woman is violently corrupt.
Yeah, and then here she's like, who would make up the rumor that Hillary Clinton is ill? I mean,
healthy
she only collapsed face first at the 9/11 memorial.
Look at this, and I'm not a physician, but that looks like to me a serious health problem, or she's drunk. A or B. Take your pick. The woman cannot walk a straight line to save her life.
Are the Russians feeding that intel into your ear?
They are right now. I have this earpiece, and it's the translation is slow forgiving because it's going from Russian into English. No, come on.
We get all of our directives direct from Putin. Sometimes Alex will kind of tell us what to say, but usually it's Vladimir Putin.
Right. Well, and all disclosures aside, I did live in Russia, and I did work for RT, which, they are Russians, folks, but I can tell you firsthand, the Russians have nothing to do with this election cycle, and the thought of this is just ludicrous. You got people like Maxine Waters. I don't know how she gets elected cycle after cycle. It's just like,
I'm pretty sure, isn't she South Central LA?
It's just something, that might explain it a little.
I'm surprised Donald Trump, he should have saved his, check your own district first before, he shouldn't have used that on John Lewis. Maybe he should have used that on Maxine.
A little bit.
Yeah, but it's just very interesting that we have so many sore losers out there who are not afraid to just come out with utter verbal diarrhea and just spit total nonsense.
The deception over these people, it's not comedy. They actually do believe it. And I met John Lewis a few years ago at this LBJ dinner. He seemed like a lovely... I had no idea that he had become a global
Well, he probably doesn't remember it, just like he didn't remember not going to George W. Bush's inauguration, and he made the big stink about how this was some unprecedented move, that he's skipping Trump's inauguration. Trump's like, you know what? We don't need you there, but please, we could use those tickets. Give us your seat. Well, Margaret, thank you so much for joining us briefly here in the last 5 minutes. And everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in to the Alex Jones Show today. We're going to have a jam-packed nightly news for you tonight at 7 p.m. Central. Margaret Howell will be your host. We'll see you there.